Chapter 98. Not long after, a slightly familiar voice floated over, with a hint of hostility. Hee, you old woman. I gave you so much money, but didn't I say that before I leave Heartfelt County, these two can only serve me? You, on the other hand, took advantage of the fact that I haven't been here for a few days and directly made the decision to have them serve others. Aren't you slapping my face? Without waiting for the madam to speak, a young man's voice, as clear as spring water brushing against a mountain stream, was heard. Lu Shi's eyes lit up. Lu Shi was like Jiang Pingji. Not only was he obsessed with appearances, but he was also obsessed with voices. Forget it, Jingze. If you like it, you can ask 2 more courtesans to serve you. Why do you have to hold on to those 2 and offend them? Hearing the familiar voice, Jiang Pingji could not help but smile. She looked meaningfully at the pretty girl who took the initiative to lean into her arms. TSK. What is this called? It's fate. Tutu Fecho, is there something wrong with my ears? Why do I feel like I heard the young man's voice? Jiaoting, you didn't hear wrong. I remember Jingze is the courtesy name of Wuma Jun and Feng Jin have a good relationship. TSK. I feel like my heart is broken. Why is Feng Jin here? Jiang Pingji saw the change in Lu Shi's expression. Although he hated Feng Jin, he didn't seem to recognize his voice. Outside the door, Wuma Jun frowned. He was dissatisfied with Feng Jin's behavior. Feng Jin was always against him. No matter what he said, Feng Jin could refute him. It was annoying and disgusting. The more Feng Jin objected, the more rebellious he became. He pushed aside the brothel keeper with one hand, ignored her pleading eyes, and pushed the door open. The girls who were singing stopped because of the commotion. The 2 groups of people outside and inside the door looked at each other in silence. Feng Jin, Wuma Jun, Jiang Pingji was not affected at all. She smiled and said, "Sisters, why did you stop?" The faces of the women who were playing and singing stiffened, but they quickly returned to their working state. Their voices were a little soft, sweet, and sticky. It was as if they could penetrate into one's heart. Jiang Pingji was not used to it at first, but after listening to it for a while, she felt that it was quite nice and charming. Even though Feng Jin and Wuma Jun didn't know Lu Shi, they knew Jiang Pingji, Lu Shi's son, Lu Shi. At this moment, it was a little awkward. He cupped his hands and said, "Cough, cough, cough. I didn't know it was Lu Langjun in the room. Please forgive me for being rude." Wuma Jun had the intention to win Jiang Pingji over to his side. Now that he had made such a big mistake, how could he not find a way to make up for it? Feng Jin felt even more awkward and uncomfortable. Were his eyes playing tricks on him? The man who had 2 beauties on his left and right, who was teasing 2 girls and laughing so hard, was Lu Shi. A real warrior dared to face the fact that his female companions were drinking and hugging women in the brothel. Feng Jin was slightly embarrassed. Jiang Pingji gestured for him to step into the room. Wuma Jun entered as well. "Huayu, let me introduce you." Jiang Pingji did not think that the atmosphere was not awkward enough. She called out Feng Jin's courtesy name. Of course, Feng Jin did not realize that something was wrong. Close friends always called each other by their courtesy names. However, he did not realize the identity of the man sitting in front of him. Lu Shi, Feng Huayu. Feng Jin looked like he was all ears, but when Jiang Pingji said the first sentence, he could not take it anymore. "This is my father." Feng Jin, Lu Shi's father was Hejian's Lu Shi or Hu County Chief Lu Zhongqing. So, he quietly turned his head to look at Lu Shi, only to find that Lu Shi was also looking at him coldly. What kind of experience was it to be caught in Yingchun House by his father's good friend? Feeling hopeless smiley face 3, Feng Jin braced himself and said, Uncle Lu. Jiang Pingji did not seem to notice it. She continued to introduce, Father, this is Feng Jin, whom I mentioned to you before. Lu Shi took a sip of tea and maintained his sitting posture. He did not even raise his eyebrows. He softly responded, yes. Wuma Jun's face was twisted. His joy was mixed with fear and panic. He indeed wanted to rope in Lu Zhongqing, but in his plan, he should have paid Lu Zhongqing a visit himself, generously dissecting his own talents and abilities, using his own charisma to pull Lu Zhongqing over to his side and obtain political support. But the result? Their first meeting, Ingchen House. Lu Shi's son. Although Dongqing's officialdom strictly forbade officials from having sex, Lu Shi's position was different from others. This was Hejin County, which was far away from the emperor. No one could use this to shake his position. If they did, there would be no officials in the whole of Dongqing. This is Huayu's good friend, Wuma Jun. His courtesy name is Shengze. Jiang Pingji was probably the only one who could maintain a good mood and enjoy the show. She, a pure woman, was having fun, while the three men looked at each other. The atmosphere was so awkward that it made people feel like they were about to explode. Feng Jin, who had always been eloquent, was now sitting obediently in his seat. His posture was obviously very standard, but in Jiang Pingji's eyes, he was as delicate and pitiful as a quail. He was trembling with fear and was truly quiet like a chicken. She looked around and realized that Lu Shi did not seem to be controlling his aura at all. Jiang Pingji added fuel to the fire. Huayu, do you want me to call a wife over? Feng Jin secretly glared at her. His meaning was obvious. Was she trying to kill him? Lu Shi looked down and spoke like an elder talking to a junior. Huayu, are you married? Feng Jin broke into a cold sweat. He was not afraid of Lu Shi, but he was afraid that the news would spread to his family. Even though he had only accompanied Wuma Jun, had never done anything out of line, no one would believe him. Feng Jin said respectfully, I'm still young. I'm not married yet. Not engaged. Lu Shi continued to ask. He did not care about Wuma Jun. After all, he did not know Wuma Jun well. He did not like Wuma Jun's father, the current emperor of Dongqing. Feng Jin calmed down. He felt that Lu Shi was going to say something. Not engaged yet. In Dongqing, there were many 16-year-old noblemen like Feng Jin who were not engaged yet. He was talented and good-looking. He could make a name for himself before he turned 20. By then, his social status would be different. It would not be an exaggeration to say that he was young and talented. It would be better to talk about marriage. Jiang Pingji secretly glanced at Lu Shi. She was afraid that he would say something about Feng Jin marrying into the Lu family. After all, Lu Shi's drunken words left a deep impression on her. Chapter 99. Feng Jin's eyelids twitched. Xiando was his father's courtesy name. Although he was a junior, he had heard that Lu Shi and Feng Ren were close. As for the words, he has a daughter, Feng Jin was shocked. He was like a bird startled by the mere twang of a bow. However, he had always been smart. He knew that Jiang Pingji's identity as a female was a secret. Few people knew about it, and Lu Shi had no intention of revealing it. Therefore, Lu Shi only had one son. His mistress's daughter was not worthy of Feng Jin's identity. Therefore, he was just being polite. Therefore, Feng Jin did not have to worry that he would be like Jiang Pingji in the future, strong and masculine. Although he did not expect to have a mistress after marriage, he did not want to fight all day. He would still be the one getting beaten up. Your nephew appreciates uncle's kindness. Even if we can't become in-laws, I and Lanting are close friends. We are better than brothers. Then, Feng Jin secretly looked at Jiang Pingji for help. He hoped that his friend could help him attract some attention. I often hear Xianda praise you three brothers. You all have the talent to be a king. If my useless son could be 3 times as capable as you brothers, I wouldn't have to worry about him in the future. Lu Shi said derogatory words about Jiang Pingji, but his expression showed otherwise. Although Feng Jin was not as sweet as his younger brother, he did know how to read people's faces. Uncle, you flatter me. My father scolded me for being stupid and not being flexible. How can I be a king? As for Lanting, although I haven't known her for long, I can see that she has a good mind. She is not as mediocre as you said. He had belittled himself and flattered Jiang Pingji. He secretly wiped the sweat off his forehead. He hoped that the troublesome Uncle Lu would let him go. It was a small matter to be put in a difficult position now. What he was afraid of was that one day he would write to his father and spill the beans. Jiang Pingji looked at the interaction between the two coldly. She snorted softly and turned to talk to Wuma Jun. Is Wuma Langjun also here to seek pleasure? At first, Wuma Jun was quite happy that Jiang Pingji was willing to take the initiative to talk to him to ease the awkward situation of him being ignored. However, she asked such a shameful question, which made him feel a little regretful. It would have been better if he had been ignored. No matter how he answered this question, it didn't seem to work. If he admitted that he was here to have fun, wouldn't that be smearing his own name and causing Lu Zhongqing's first impression of him to fall to rock bottom? If he denied it, it would be even worse. As a man, he dared to take responsibility for his actions. How could he not dare to admit such a small matter? If he didn't have the guts and backbone, what great things could he achieve in the future? After going through the 2 answers in his mind, Wuma Jun chose to avoid answering because a direct answer would definitely be wrong. I came with Huayu, but why is Lanting here? With that, he could not help but sweep his gaze over the 2 women, and a wave of displeasure rose in his heart. It was not that he valued the 2 prostitutes, but he was unhappy that no one had asked for his permission and had touched his people. Even if that person was the son of Lu Zhongqing, whom he wanted to rope in, he still did not like it. However, Wuma Jun would not show his emotions. Instead, he buried them deeper, making it hard for others to see through them. Of course, that did not include Jiang Pingji. Of course, my father brought me here. She told the truth and ignored Wuma Jun's ugly expression, as if he had eaten a fly. He was worried that I would be too curious and would not be able to resist other people's instigation. Instead of that, it would be better for him to bring me here personally to broaden my horizons. The more he tried to stop it, the easier it would cause reverse psychology. If he showed it openly, it would be easier for people to lose interest and treat him with a normal attitude. Wuma Jun could not wrap his head around it. What was the connection between the 2? Even so, according to the power of the Lu family, what kind of women can't they get? Why bother to come to such a chaotic place? Wuma Jun did not understand. In his opinion, a normal man would hint to his wife and ask her to arrange a servant girl for his child. What kind of father would bring his son to a brothel? He had never seen or heard of such a thing. Jiang Pingji suddenly smiled. You should not ask me this question. You should ask those who indulge in sensual pleasures and linger in the southern courtyard of the brothel. In terms of wealth and power, they are much more powerful than me. Why do they like to come to this kind of place? Wuma Jun's face froze. At that moment, the pretty girl who was half leaning on Jiang Pingji's shoulder smiled foolishly. Lang Jun, why do you think so? Of course, because the flowers at home are not as fragrant as wild flowers. A legitimate wife, a legitimate concubine, these were all things that were already in the bag. If you want to have sex, you can do it at any time, but the women outside are different. Only those that you can't have are worth thinking about, Jiang Pingji said calmly. There was no longer a smile on her face. She looked at Wu Majun with sarcasm in her eyes. If the two women had not come to the private room but waited for Wu Majun obediently, he would have been forgotten after a few times. The main reason he refused to let go of the matter was that he had been humiliated. It had nothing to do with the two women. Don't you think I'm right, Master Wu Ma? Lu Shi had been paying attention to the situation. He laughed and scolded, what sense? It's all a bunch of twisted logic. Twisted logic is still logic. It's just not as straightforward as other logic. After that, she turned to the girl beside her and whispered something in her ear. The girl's cheeks suddenly turned red. Lang Jun, please come with me. Jiang Pingji stood up and flicked her sleeves. She casually tilted her head and said to Lu Shi, Father, please enjoy your conversation. I won't stay any longer. After that, she followed the two girls out of the private room and went to one of the boudoirs. Lu Shi was speechless. Lu Shi was not the only one who was dumbfounded. Even though Jiang Pingji did not say it explicitly, they could understand what she was hinting at. Was he going to sleep in the same bed with the two girls? 3 girls together. While Feng Jin's nerves were out of control, he secretly observed Lu Shi's expression. But the older, the wiser. If Lu Shi was the kind of rookie who showed his emotions and was seen through by the younger generation, he would not be able to stay in Dongqing's officialdom. Feng Jin could not read the slightest emotion from Lu Shi's face. He could not help but feel suspicious. Could it be that Uncle Lu did not know that Lanting was a girl? Feng Jin suddenly felt awkward. If Lu Shi really did not know and he took the initiative to tell Lu Shi, it would be a despicable act. Apart from that, he could not explain how he knew that Lu Shi was a girl. He could not say that it was a dark and windy night when Lu Shi escaped from the bandits' lair. Her clothes were messy and a corner of her dudu was exposed. Her hair was messy at that time, and it showed that she was a girl. If he dared to say that, he would be courting death. What if Lu Shi asked him to take responsibility for Lu Shi's reputation? Chapter 100. Feng Jin was in a dilemma. Elsewhere, Jiang Pingji arrived at one of the ladies' chambers. The furnishings in the room were warm and elegant, and every corner was filled with the aura of a young girl. You're not feeling well. Drink some sweet water and go to bed early. Jiang Pingji smiled at the pretty girl, Xia and said gently, or should I ask someone to bring you some blood-enriching soup? Xia's eyes lit up, and she looked at Jiang Pingji. Ha! Xia thought Jiang Pingji was there for fun, but she didn't expect her to say that. Chun was at a loss as well. It's your period. Why don't you pay attention? Jiang Pingji said with a smile, don't drink alcohol or eat cold food for the next few days. Period. The two girls looked at each other. Maybe it was psychological, but Xia felt a slight pain in her lower abdomen after hearing Jiang Pingji's words. There was a faint warmth flowing down her lower body. Her face turned red and white, and she didn't know how to react. Jiang Pingji didn't know how women in this era dealt with their periods, but it wasn't easy. I don't know how you girls deal with such situations, so I brought you both here. I'll have to trouble you, Chun to help her out. The faint smell of blood on Xia's body grew stronger, and her fair face turned red under Jiang Pingji's gaze. Most women in the brothel had irregular periods, and many of them had minor problems that they were ashamed of. Xia, for example, had irregular periods every month. When she felt pain, her limbs would turn cold, and even her molars would hurt. She tried to sit properly, but even the slightest movement caused her to twitch in pain, which made her shy and anxious. Jiang Pingji looked at the two girls' reactions and took the initiative to sit behind the screen. She blocked the camera in the streaming room from her view. Doubting, I thought the host would have sex with the girl. I didn't expect her to be on her period _ smiley face 3, angle, _ Fanghua Zhou. I want to repent. When the host left the private room with the girl, I thought there was going to be an erotic scene. I didn't expect it to be for this. Although it's different from what I imagined, the host is super gentle. I wish I had a boyfriend like the host. 1,000 years of parting Wujiang Zhao Kai, same repentance plus one Xiao Qingqing, I'm in a daze. Although I know it's inhumane to laugh at this time, if the host was a man, he would probably be depressed. Just as he was about to have some fun with the girl, she was on her period, she would definitely vomit blood out of depression. Jiang Pingji sat behind the screen. There was a tea table beside her. She poured herself a cup and raised her eyebrows. Host V, that's not right. That's a smile. If I were a man, I might not be depressed and vomit blood in such a situation. After all, there were still the eastern and western palaces to relieve my worries. If Thumbelina wasn't up to it, he could still be a little more beastly, such as Jade Blood Cleansing Silver Snatch. Of course, this kind of behavior was too demented. A bunch of rookies still wanted to compete with her in dirty jokes. Jiang Pingji was surprised and took a sip of tea leisurely. The style of the bullet screen had completely changed. Qianqiu Yubi Wujiang Zhatsai, my streamer is amazing. I didn't expect you to be such a filthy, sick streamer. Sunset Sun, sob 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 sob, old driver is driving the train over there. What did you hear? Tudu Feiqiu, filthy voice. Lovelorn Front Lianming, I'm speechless. I can't believe I'm watching a female streamer act like a hooligan _ smiley face 3, angle, _ Baigue Yexing, so what if she's a hooligan? If my boyfriend could be like the streamer, no, at least 1/10 of her, I could have sex with him every day. I'd be unhappy if she didn't act like a hooligan. You don't understand, it's better to *CK her back. Jiang Pingji always complained that she had 3,000 veterans in her streaming room, but she never thought that birds of a feather flocked together. Different streamers would attract different kinds of viewers. She was an experienced veteran, so how could she complain that others were too filthy? Jiang Pingji glanced at the bullet screen of Baigue Yexing and thought about it carefully. It was so meaningful. Time passed quietly as people watched the bullet screen and drank tea. The rustling sound of clothes rubbing against each other came from behind the screen, and it gradually quieted down. Not long after, the screen was quietly pushed open. Xia had changed into a new set of clothes, but her face was still flushed. Lang Jun, I'm not feeling well today. I'm afraid I can't serve you. Chun He continued, if you don't mind my appearance, then. Jiang Pingji smiled and shook her head. The other person's face turned pale. I'm afraid you've misunderstood me. I didn't mean that. Jiang Pingji raised her hand and gestured for them to sit down. Her expression was still gentle. I feel happy and satisfied to be able to look at you two like this. If I do anything else, wouldn't I be desecrating this beauty? It's easy to get love, but it's hard to find a true friend. Both of them were young. They had been bought by the brothel keeper when they were young and trained. They had been prostitutes for a few years. What kind of people had they not seen? Whether it was true or false, it couldn't be hidden from their eyes. Everyone said that whores were heartless and entertainers were heartless. Wasn't it because they had long seen through the hypocrisy of others? How could it be so easy to exchange false feelings for true feelings? Especially the true feelings of prostitutes who had seen through the affairs of the world. What kind of sweet words had they not heard in their daily lives? They just listened to it and didn't take it seriously. But when it came from Jiang Pingji, they subconsciously chose to believe it. When they came back to their senses, they didn't feel that it was wrong. The older Xia smiled bitterly. Lang Jun, you're flattering me. I'm just a broken flower. How can I deserve such praise? People say that beauty is in the bones, not the skin, but I think beauty is in the heart, not the bones. Looks are given by one's parents. No one can choose, but character and temperament are acquired. Both of you have a pure heart in the mortal world. How can you not be beautiful? Jiang Pingji wasn't just praising them. She had her reasons. Most of the women in the brothel had been raised since they were young. Except for a few who were born beautiful and had great potential, most of them were used as maids. They were beaten and scolded at every turn. They were at the bottom of the food chain in the brothel. Not only did they have to face all kinds of customers who made things difficult for them and took advantage of them, but they also had to endure the torture of the women they served. If they were unlucky enough to meet some violent ones, they might lose their lives. Jiang Pingji had a sensitive sense of smell. When she passed by the maids in the hall, she smelled the fragrance of medicine on them. Although their steps were steady, their balance was not natural. It meant that they were injured and had been treated with medicine. Jiang Pingji wasn't familiar with the medicine in this world, so she couldn't smell the ingredients. But one of the medicines was the second lady's decoction. It wasn't very expensive, but it wasn't something that a maid like her could use. If the maids were valued enough to use medicine, why would the brothel allow the customers to humiliate them? It didn't make sense. If it wasn't from the brothel, then where did it come from? When Jiang Pingji smelled the fragrance of Chen-er's makeup, she got the answer. When she arrived, she saw that there was a wooden box in the corner that had not been completely covered, and this small question was solved. Chapter 101. Lang Jun is so young, but you're already so good at sweet-talking. When you grow up, I wonder how many girls you'll disappoint. Love go little say net W. Chu Xia held the handkerchief in her hand and used it to cover her lips. Even someone like me is tempted, much less the other girls. Jiang Pingji had always been able to tell the difference between truth, lies, and jokes. Miss Xia, you're wrong. Even if it's sweet talking, there's still a difference. Jiang Pingji continued, to me, all the beautiful girls in the world are as precious as jade plates. Of course, they should be treated with the utmost respect. My sweet talking is from the bottom of my heart, and it's not frivolous at all. As for other men, if they have bad intentions, even if they can name a flower, they'll still be acting like a hooligan. As soon as she finished speaking, the two girls were amused. They felt as if they had eaten honey. Just as Jiang Pingji said, her words were from the bottom of her heart. That was why they were so touching. Even though the two girls were used to romance, they were still affected. However, they had seen many modest but arrogant gentry. It was the first time they saw one who liked to boast so much. It was a little funny. Xia laughed and said, yes, yes, yes. Lang Jun is a gentleman. Rimu Xiang, life is lovely. JPG. Mama asked me why I kneeled to watch the stream _ smiley face 3, angle, _ Qianqiubi Wujiang Zhatsai. I also kneeled to watch the stream. If I had the streamer's skills, why would I still be single? Jiang Pingji smiled and took the tea made by Xia. Although the ingredients were not as expensive as the ones in the loos, the taste was more exquisite. Love go little say net W. Chu felt her body heat up as soon as she took a sip. It warmed her heart and drove away the coldness of early spring. Host V. Qianqiubi Wujiang Zhatsai, that's not right. I've always been single. It didn't mean that she could get rid of her single status. For example, she had a bunch of close friends and brothers, but none of them had developed a relationship. After all, not everyone could endure days without any secrets. The pressure was too great. Chincho yubi wujeng zha kai, oh no. After hearing what the host said, I feel like I'm going to be single until I die. In the eyes of many live stream viewers, the prostitutes in the brothels were all prostitutes. Other than stripping and having sex, they seemed to have no other skills. On the other hand, Chun and Xia had taught them a harsh lesson. They knew what it meant to be proficient in the four arts. Other than these skills, they were also proficient in the classics and history books. One should know that the literacy rate was so low that it was scary. When he played other musical instruments, he had the demeanor of a master of accumulating points. Under Jiang Pingji's secret guidance, the whole streaming room was in a state of Host V. Some viewers despised them before, but I just want to say that those viewers don't even have the right to despise them. How could the self-restraint of the four arts compare to others? In your era, you would be a top student at the very least. They are not very talented, but in order to survive, they try their best to learn and enrich themselves. This in itself is worthy of respect. Do you have the right to despise them? In my opinion, there is nothing to criticize about them, including the means that you despise to survive by selling your bodies. Jiang Pingji still did not understand where some people in the streaming room got their sense of superiority from. Indeed, there was a generation gap. Rimu Xiang, that makes some sense. I suddenly thought of some old jokes about transmigration. The female protagonist must go to a brothel to perform a modern hit song and dance, and then people will be shocked. It's funny now that I think about it. After all, the two eras are not only separated by time and space, but also by culture. Some people agreed with Jiang Pingji's opinion, but naturally, there were also people who disagreed. Dolly Buting, a prostitute is a prostitute. No matter how talented she is, she still depends on being F***ked for money. No matter how nice it sounds, she is still a whore. What do you mean, host? When people mock you, you act like your tail was stepped on and you can't wait to whitewash yourself. I can guess that you used to be in this kind of business, right? These days, all kinds of lowly people can transmigrate and become a lady from a rich family. With a change of body, people can't smell your pretentious aura. Jiang Pingji read the comments, but the smile on her face did not disappear. It was not that she had good self-restraint. In fact, her temper had always been terrible. It was just that people could not see the bullet screen in the streaming room. If she suddenly lost her temper, it would definitely scare Xia and Chun, who were sitting beside her. It would not be good to scare beautiful women for the sake of a few ignorant people. She was too lazy to pay attention to them, lest she lowered her status. Facts speak louder than words. She would make them shut up. Time seems to pass very quickly when I'm with Lang Jun. Xia held a cup of wuhong soup that Jiang Pingji had specially ordered. She drank it, which greatly relieved the pain in her abdomen. Her pale face became a little rosier, and her eyes became more watery. Jiang Pingji heard the sound of the night watch outside and silently calculated the time. If you don't mind, can I come visit often? When it comes to poetry, even many of my classmates are not as accomplished as you two ladies. Jiang Pingji smiled sincerely. She said she would come to visit, and she really meant it. If the court allows women to become officials, with your talents, you two will definitely be able to get a seat. When that time comes, you might even be able to become officials of the same court. Jiang Pingji's last sentence was mostly a joke, but the first sentence was a real compliment. Xia blushed, but her eyes were clear. She said, Lang Jun, you're making fun of me. I only read classics and history when I'm free. How can I compare to your classmates? Moreover, this is a brothel. Lang Jun, you have a beautiful woman in your backyard, so you should stay away from this place. Rimu Xieyang, the host's charm can even tempt the ladies in the brothel _ smiley face 3, angle, _ chincho yubi wujiang zha kai. I know why the host doesn't want to be single. It must be so that others can't be single. Flirting with all the ladies and raising their standards of choosing a husband, so that most men can't be single. How sinister. Fanghua Zhou, host, can you get that idiot Delay to stop talking? He's so noisy that I can't watch the stream. Host V, if others want to bark like dogs and show off their manners, why should we stop them? The audience was speechless. What she said made sense, and they were speechless. Ladies, why do you have to belittle yourselves? Jiang Pingji said with a smile, just wait and see. Maybe in the future, women will really become officials and enter the court. Xia and Chun were both focused on the word wife, and did not pay much attention to the latter part of the sentence. Women entering the court as officials. It might have been possible during the period of the 16 Kingdoms or the early years of the Xia dynasty. However, during the Xia dynasty, more and more women were confined to their chambers and backyards. In the current 5 kingdoms, the phenomenon was getting more and more serious. It was even said that in Zhongzhou, which was the most powerful country in China, women could no longer show their faces in public or remarry. At home, their father was the king. After marriage, their husband was the king. If their husband died, their son would be the king. If they lost their virginity, they would drown. If they went out, they would be accused of indecency. Chapter 102. Lungjuan's mouth is so sweet that it has entered my heart. A hoarse old woman's voice came from the door. Jiang Pingji frowned, and Chun He thought she was unhappy. Why would anyone disturb us at this hour? Nothing out of the ordinary happened, but to outsiders, the 2 ladies had entered the room to serve her. Normally, no one would disturb them. Otherwise, what if the guests were to be interrupted when they were in high spirits? What would they do if they became impotent? Xia stood up and smiled. Lang Jun, don't be angry. I'll go take a look. As he finished speaking, he folded his sleeves and left. The sound of the door being pushed open could be heard, followed by Xia's doubtful reply. After a while, Xia came in with a bitter smile. She said in a low voice, that was the maid who cleaned the courtyard. She said that a girl ran away. The pimps in the building couldn't catch her. Someone suspects that she is hiding in one of the ladies' rooms. Is that why we have to search your room? Jiang Pingji frowned. She knew very well whether there was another person in the room. If we don't search it, people will gossip. Xia sighed. Because she was clean, she was asked to serve the mysterious guest, Wuma Jun. Her life was more comfortable than the other ladies in the brothel. However, it made the top courtesan unhappy. She might want to humiliate Jiang Pingji. Did the brothel keeper agree to it? Jiang Pingji raised her eyebrows and sneered. She knows I'm in this room, but she still asked her to come in. Isn't she trying to spoil the fun? I don't care. I can't be calculative with a brothel keeper. But in the end, you are the one who will suffer. Chun and Xia looked embarrassed. Jiang Pingji said cheerfully, let the maid in. You 2 stay here and don't move. Don't let anyone disturb you. After getting permission, the maid led 2 men in gray linen clothes and green headscarves into the room. They rummaged through the room. The noise outside was getting louder. Xia and Chun looked terrified. It's okay. Don't panic. After a while, the commotion finally died down. Jiang Pingji stood up and walked out of the screen. She looked at the hunchbacked old woman and asked, Old lady, did you find anyone? The old maid bowed slightly and smiled. Her brown face looked a little greasy under the candlelight. There was a big black mole at the corner of her mouth, which made her look a little wretched. I'm sorry to disturb you. I didn't find anyone. I'll go down now. Jiang Pingji nodded, indicating that she could lead them away. This old maid is so rude. How could she make the rooms so messy? Although Chun had a good temper, she was still a little angry when she saw the makeup and hairpins that had been messed up on the dressing table. When she thought of how the old woman and the two pimps had touched her rouge and face powder, and how dirty it was, she suddenly felt nauseous. Check to see if anything is missing. Xia said gently, Mom always suspects us of hiding money. She knows all the places in this building that are suitable for hiding money. She might take this opportunity to let the old maid come in and take the money away. That reminded Chun her, but she didn't dare to get up when she thought about Jiang Pingji in the room. Don't worry. Nothing is missing. Jiang Pingji looked around and said with a smile, but there are some things that shouldn't be there. Chun blinked. Lang Jun, you said nothing is missing. What is there? Yes. Jiang Pingji walked around the room twice and took out 2 green scented sachets from a place that the 2 ladies didn't know about. Which dirty man does this scented sachet belong to? Xia took a look and thought it was something dirty, so she threw it aside. That's not the main point. The things inside are interesting. Jiang Pingji opened the scented sachet and put some strange dried plants inside. She took some out and sniffed it. She frowned and said, Lady Chun, you know how to make scented medicine. Do you know the effects of these things? Before Chun was sold to Chun brothel, she was the daughter of a doctor. Because of her father's occupation, she knew some medicine. The 2 ladies looked at each other when they heard Jiang Pingji call them. They stepped forward and examined the scented sachet. They found it familiar. Don't sniff it for too long. It's bad for your brain. Jiang Pingji grabbed Chun's fair wrist. I don't know what this medicine is, but it has the effect of confusing one's mind. If you smell it for too long, it's extremely easy to cause your mind to become muddled, your thoughts to be muddled, and you won't know what's going on. Chun threw the scented sachet back when she heard that. She suddenly remembered something and her face turned red. She spat on the scented sachet and scolded, which shameless bastard put this in here? It's one thing for the ladies in the brothel to serve their customers, but how dare those eunuchs covet you? How shameless! Jiang Pingji realized that the scented sachet was probably the knockout drug of this era. Xia gritted her teeth and looked terrified. It must have been those 2 pimps who released it. Once they entered the brothel, they would be humiliated for the rest of their lives. She had heard other ladies talk about how the pimps who worked in the brothel bullied them. Jiang Pingji smiled. Did the pimps do it? Not necessarily. Host V, something interesting seems to be happening. Are you guys still sleepy? Do you want to watch a good show? Yimi Yangguang, Did you find something? Ichi Sanqing, I'm confused, but you're still keeping us guessing. You're so bad. Hongjun Laozu de Jua, I feel like you're trying to stir up trouble. Count me in. I'll watch your stream all night. Huaqua de Jua, you're a real man who's destined to stir up trouble. Hongjun Laozu de Jua, TSK. To be precise, the trouble has already been ruined by you. The audience in the streaming room was excited to watch the show. Jiang Pingji had also made a decision. She turned to the 2 ladies and said, You should rest early, especially Xia. Be careful these few days and eat less cold food. Don't be greedy and harm your health. If I'm free, I'll visit you again. If there's any trouble, you can find me at the Lu residence. Feng Huazhou, I feel like these 2 ladies are to your liking. Why don't you save them from this hell? Jiang Pingji glanced at the bullet screen and met Xia Er's eyes. She nodded at her and said goodbye. Why not? Host V, probably because I can't save them. There are countless prostitutes who are more pitiful than them. If I want to save any of them, how can I save all of them? To really save them, you can't just take them away from here. You have to rebuild their broken backs. To really save them, you have to change the root cause of their current situation. Maybe she could do it. Chapter 103. Jiang Pingji was stunned for a moment when she saw the words, soft-hearted and kind-hearted. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Host V, it's the first time someone said I'm soft-hearted and kind-hearted. That was the judgment of the viewers who were separated by a dimensional screen. Because the images they saw were what she wanted them to see, they were easily misled by subjective emotions. But what kind of person was Jiang Pingji in reality? They would find out soon enough. Yimi Yangwang, host, you said you were going to watch a good show. Where is it? Jiang Pingji squinted her eyes and opened the sandalwood fan in her hand. A sly smile blossomed on her face. Host V, don't stop. Watch carefully. You'll be glad that we're separated by a dimensional distance. After sending the bullet screen, Jiang Pingji ignored the viewers who were dumbfounded. She made a detour to the backyard of Ingchun brothel, climbed over the wall, and nimbly hid in the shadows cast by the eaves. She adjusted her breathing rate and controlled her breathing movements to minimize her presence. The viewers in the streaming room were dumbfounded. Jiang Pingji thought about it and asked the system to turn on the infrared camera system at night. From her angle, she could see the corner door of the backyard. Because there was a small artificial hill nearby, the light couldn't penetrate it. As a result, the corner door was unusually dark. Yimi Yangwang, this is what the backyard of a brothel looks like. People come and go. It's quite lively. Now, is the streamer looking for someone here? They're all unfamiliar faces. What's so interesting about it? After waiting quietly for a while, just when everyone's patience was about to run out, a few sneaky figures walked out of the back hall. With the help of the ultra-clear streaming camera, the viewers in the streaming room could clearly see the figures. Some of the viewers who were watching the stream recognized them immediately. Wasn't that the old woman who led the pimps to search Chun Er's room? As they were thinking about it, the old woman bent her back and lowered her head to talk to the two pimps. The three of them seemed to be chatting happily. Jiang Pingji looked at them coldly. The two pimps looked around. One of them took a small silver coin from the old woman's hand. They didn't care that the silver coin was dirty. They put it in their hands and bit it hard. Then they took it out to check if it was real or fake. Then, the two pimps looked at each other and waved at the old maid. They separated in different directions. The old maid rubbed her hands against the corner of her linen clothes and continued to hunch her back. She quietly opened the corner door and walked to the alley separated by a wall from the backyard. The audience was puzzled. What was going on? Following that, some of the audience members tried to make guesses after connecting what had happened. Qianshan Muxue, are the three of them splitting the loot? He secretly embezzled the hard-earned money of the prostitutes in the brothel. He felt like a blood-sucking bug. Tutu Feicho, based on my understanding of the host, things are definitely not that simple. Didn't she say that she didn't want to stop just now? She probably wanted to do something to teach you a lesson. Think about the last time she beat a servant to death. Although most of the audience in the streaming room were novices and it was the first time for many of them to enter the streaming room, the video of Jiang Pingji's previous streaming had been spread on the public platform of their dimension. The most bloody video was censored after it was broadcasted. The censored video was the content of the servant being beaten to death. Dolly Buting, haha, I'm not scared. Come at me if you have the ability, bitch. Although the bullet screen was very tough, the audience felt that it was a bluff. At that moment, some of the audience could not help but come back to their senses and dig out what Jiang Pingji had said before. You will be glad that you and I are separated by a dimension. This host is going to tear apart her own audience again. Host V, you are thinking too much. You are not that important. At most, you are just a bonus. Not everyone is qualified for her revenge. Don't think too highly of yourself. While the audience was guessing, the old maid had already turned into the alley. Jiang Pingji got up and chased after her. Stepping on the eaves and walls, she was relaxed and natural as if she was taking a stroll in the park. Not long after, the audience in the streaming room heard a rustling sound coming from the deep alley. With the convenience of the infrared camera at night, the scene in the deep alley was clearly displayed in front of them. Yimi Yangguang, damn, host, are you serious? You want us to watch an old woman take off her clothes and see her naked body? In the deep alley, the old maid with a hunched back was taking off her heavy linen clothes one by one. They thought they would see a high-energy scene, but they soon realized that something was wrong. She was wearing too many clothes, wasn't she? As she took off her clothes one by one, the hunched and bloated old maid gradually became thin until she took off her hair cap, revealing her tightly tied black hair. Only then did the audience realize that she was not an old maid at all. Qianshan Mushue, is this the legendary magical disguise technique? It's even more magical than plastic surgery here. They witnessed the whole process of a hunched and bloated old maid turning into a skinny middle-aged man. When he wiped off the greasy brown unknown substance on his face, a sharp mouth and monkey cheeks were revealed, and a pair of slender rat eyes were particularly bright in the dark night. His face was no longer brown, but it looked like he had been drinking too much. After stuffing the disguise into the gray bag one by one, the man adjusted his clothes, pinched the heavy money bag hanging on his waist, and revealed a satisfied smile. Humming a tune, the man strode out of the deep alley with his head held high. He did not notice that there was a pair of cold eyes staring at him from the wall. Looking at the direction he was going, he should be going to the main entrance of Ingchun brothel. Jiang Pingji sneered. The man heard the noise and turned his head abruptly. He shouted, "Who's there?" "No one." The man frowned. He could not help but wonder if he was being paranoid and had an illusion. However, the next moment, something fell on his back. Before he could turn around, he felt a sharp pain in his neck. Staring at the unconscious man for a while, she said with slight disappointment, "It's a small fish." She grabbed the back of the man's collar with one hand and easily dragged him into the deep alley. Squatting beside the man, Jiang Pingji frowned. The audience in the streaming room held their breath, afraid to disturb her thoughts. After a while, she pulled out a snow-white handkerchief from the man's lapel. There was a snow-white and delicate lotus embroidered on it. The owner of the handkerchief was not an adult woman, but an unmarried girl. She was about 10 years old and was not a prostitute. Jiang Pingji closed her eyes slightly and searched for a small bag on the man's waist. There were 7 pearls of the same size and shape. Chapter 104. Looking at what she had found, Jiang Pingji's eyebrows were almost twisted into a knot. She looked at the man with an unfriendly gaze, as if he was not a living person in her eyes, but a corpse that had already turned cold. Love goes small show on net W. Chew on the side. The audience in the streaming room was so curious that they wanted to climb out of the screen and shake her shoulders. Don't keep us guessing. Jiang Pingji did not seem to notice the anxiety of the audience. Instead, she raised her hand and untied the belt around the man's waist. She took out something that was wrapped in something hard from his clothes. She squeezed it, and the texture was as she had guessed. She opened it and saw that it was a small roll of bamboo slips. Hongjun Laozu's Juhua, host, what are the words on it? Sorcerer's girl offing, I remember that it should be some people's names. I also saw some words like XX Lane. I guess it should be a record of where someone lives and their age. But I don't know what the super ugly lines at the bottom mean. Is it a secret of some mysterious organization in the host's hands? Meishu's warrior IUN, I envy those who are knowledgeable. I used to know astronomy and geography, but after 4 years in university, I feel like I've become illiterate smiley face 3 angle _host. I only know 2 words on this bamboo slip. I'm sorry, my language teacher. Jiang Pingji pursed her lips. At that moment, the man who had fainted slowly woke up. Before he could raise his hand to rub the sore spot, he suddenly saw a dark figure squatting beside him. He almost rolled and crawled 2 steps backward. However, he soon found that his belt had been loosened, and his loose pants were no longer tied. As he crawled, he quickly took off his pants below his buttocks, revealing a patch of white. When the night wind blew, it was so cold that he could not help but shiver. At that moment, the monkey-like man could not help but want to cry. He thought that he had only met a robber, but he did not expect that the other party wanted to rob him of his body. Everything happened so suddenly that the audience in the streaming room could not react at all. Their vision was already blocked by a large patch of white. Hongjun Laozu's chrysanthemum, damn, although I have such an ID, I'm really not interested in a man's chrysanthemum. Now, the streamer's driving skills are really unexpected. The dirty scenes are as fast as lightning. Qianshan Mushue, oh my, streamer, you're the death of me. My mom watched the stream with me, and now I'm kneeling on the ground. Jiang Pingji was also stunned. She had a disgusted expression on her face. She lifted her leg and kicked the man's left buttocks. The man fell forward like a dog eating its food. He even staggered and rolled twice. The stones on the ground rubbed against his face, leaving several bruises on his face. Being treated like this, the man suddenly felt a surge of anger in his heart. Without caring about fear, he rolled to the side and pulled some distance away. He grabbed his pants tightly with both hands, spat, and said fiercely, "Which idiot dares to rob me of my body?" Jiang Pingji was speechless. She didn't need to look to know that the live stream room would be full of ha 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 and use this as a joke to mock her. Hee, rob me. Hearing this, Jiang Pingji felt as if her fingers had touched the snot of an unknown person. The cold and sticky feeling spread from her fingertips to her whole body. She had goosebumps, which disgusted her. You don't deserve it. He thought it was a homeless man or a desperado who wanted to rob him, but when he heard the voice coming from the darkness, he was startled. That clear and clean voice automatically made the general outline of a handsome young man appear in his mind. Nowadays, men were very popular. The business of places like the South Yard Luoguan was even better than the brothels. In the man's mind, he subconsciously recalled his little lover in the South Courtyard's brothel. Not to mention that her body was soft and delicate, her soft and tender skin was extremely good to the touch. Her taste was even more memorable than some clean virgins. For a moment, his courage firmly suppressed the fear and anger in his heart. Oh, it's a young Lang Jun. Listening to this voice, I don't even need to look at the person. My body is reacting. The man used the hemp rope he found at the last minute as a belt around his waist, but he didn't really run naked. Jiang Pingji's face became more and more gloomy. The man's vision was affected by the darkness, so he could only see a vague outline even with his eyes wide open. However, she could see the undisguised dirty expression on his face, which made her feel disgusted. If you told my brother earlier, he would definitely have sex with you. You wouldn't need to force yourself, relying on his age and height, the man seemed to be very fearless. He had a lot of good stuff on him, so he was not afraid of the young man with such a young voice and short stature. His reaction just now was because it was too sudden, and he was startled by it. Those who dare to tease me are either not born yet, dead, or on their way to die. Jiang Pingji held the wig that the man used to disguise himself as an old woman. She squeezed it into a ball and punched the man's face. Then she forced the wig into his mouth. At the same time, she hit the man's lower abdomen with her knee, causing a moment of numbness and loss of control of his limbs. No one knew better than Jiang Pingji what kind of force she used to hit which part of the body and what kind of reaction it would produce. Even if Lu Lanting had been a weakling in the past, she would still have been able to subdue him easily, let alone now. How disgusting! Jiang Pingji's wooden clogs were 3 inches below the man's navel. The unspeakable pain in his balls overtook the pain in his face and lower abdomen. The man curled up into a ball, his eyes almost popping out of their sockets, and the corners of his eyes were bloodshot. However, he couldn't scream because his mouth was still stuffed with the stinky wig. Saliva flowed out of the wig. Now, I had a feeling that the host crushed my balls and d*ck. It hurts so much. I was so scared that I stuffed Thumbelina into my pocket and felt my little friend. Now I'm being treated as a lunatic by my friends. Fatty Big C, that's nothing. Can you imagine the 8 of us touching each other's crotches? Paid axing, I can't imagine the 8 of you touching each other's crotches. The male viewers felt like they had been hit by a critical hit, while the female viewers felt like it was a pain in the balls. Of course, the streaming room was a place where crooks and dragons mingled. Apart from those who had a peculiar style, there were other defenders who naturally criticized Jiang Pingji for being ruthless and having no morals. Among them, Don't Stop Dolly criticized her the most viciously. Chapter 105. I originally wanted to give you a quick death, but I didn't expect you to be so eager to go to hell. Jiang Pingji grabbed his collar with one hand and lifted him up easily. She said coldly, "If that's the case, I'll fulfill your wish." The man's face was already green and red from the pain. He didn't hear what Jiang Pingji said at all. His numb limbs didn't listen to him at all. However, I'm someone who likes to squeeze out every last bit of value from people. Since you're still useful, I'll allow you to live in luxury for a while longer. After she finished speaking, Jiang Pingji's eyes revealed a trace of ruthlessness. She quickly disappeared, as if she had never appeared. Host V, as a responsible host, I think it's not just about broadcasting some boring daily life. I also need to popularize some common sense knowledge to the audience, such as, how to make a stubborn duck tell the truth. Young man, have you heard of torture? Jiang Pingji's words piqued the curiosity of some of the more timid viewers. They were obviously scared to death and covered their eyes with their hands, but they still could not resist the curiosity in their hearts. They could not help but secretly open their fingers and peep through the gaps between their fingers to see what would happen next. In the Federation's dictionary, interrogation by torture was different from ordinary interrogation procedures. Those who knew the ropes would most likely shudder at the mention of it. Almost every federal soldier had mastered the essentials of interrogation by torture. As the leader of the army, it was impossible for Jiang Pingji not to learn this skill. Host V, of course, I don't recommend that you use it in real life, because it might kill someone. Host V, if one day you use this method in practice, please don't blame it on me. As she spoke, Jiang Pingji put a relatively clean handkerchief on her hands. Using the man as a teaching tool, she personally taught the live stream audience what a real professional interrogation was. On the surface, it was far less bloody than the so-called 10 great tortures, but in essence, it was more ruthless than those brutal punishments. Not only could it destroy the body, but it could also easily destroy the mind. Even a well-trained genetic warrior would not be able to withstand the full set of torture methods of the Federation, let alone a hooligan with a weak heart from ancient times. Jiang Pingji had only shown a little of her power, but the other party was already on the verge of collapsing. His consciousness was in a muddled state. She took out a flint and burned the handkerchief. The orange light illuminated half of her face. "What's your name?" "Lin Xingdog." The man's eyes were unfocused, and the hair cover in his mouth had been removed. However, there was still a steady stream of turbid saliva flowing down the corner of his mouth. Some dripped onto his upper body, and some flowed down his neck to his collarbone. This scene could definitely drive a germaphobe crazy. Jiang Pingji narrowed her eyes. "You're not a local. Where are you from?" "Meng County, Tsang Prefecture." The man tilted his head, and his limbs twitched from time to time. His gaze was blank, but his reply to Jiang Pingji was clear. "Meng County, Tsang Prefecture." Jiang Pingji frowned and searched through Lu Lanting's memories for information about the place. The land of Dongqing was divided into 6 states and 21 counties. Sangzhou was one of the more prosperous states. Because the trade route to the north was smooth, it had close connections with the northern borderline. Many merchants went there to do business. Therefore, Sangzhou's economy was at the forefront of Dongqing. As for Meng County, it was the largest county in Tsang Prefecture and had the richest economy. "Apart from you, there are a few other accomplices. What are their names? What do they look like? Where are they now?" Jiang Pingji asked the last question. It meant that the shifty-eyed man had reached the end of his life. The man answered each question one by one. Jiang Pingji's expression turned cold, as if it could freeze a person's heart. "Good answer. I'll give you a quick death this time." Jiang Pingji easily ended the man's life. Out of habit, she cleaned up the evidence of the crime. Then, she stood up and left the alley with her usual expression. A figure in green stood at the entrance of the alley. Her clothes fluttered in the night breeze, and the cold moonlight illuminated her figure. Jiang Pingji was not surprised to see Feng Jin. She walked up to him, and before he could say anything, she had already stabbed him. "Don't pretend to be cool when you're thin." Feng Jin was speechless. "Be careful. You'll have a headache the next day. Don't blame it on me." Feng Jin took a deep breath to avoid being angered to death. It was easy to get into trouble in deep alleys, not to mention Lang Lang Alley. It was estimated that 10 to 20% of the gangsters and wanderers in Hejin County were gathered there. Those people did not consider the consequences. They did things based on their mood. If Jiang Pingji provoked them, they would not be merciful. However, as soon as he thought of Jiang Pingji's strength, his worries changed. It would be fine if she did not take the initiative to cause trouble. Jiang Pingji looked him up and down. "Why did you come out? The warm air in the house is much better than the cold wind outside." "I wanted to come out for some fresh air, but I didn't expect to meet the 2 ladies who served you before. I felt something was wrong, so I asked. I didn't expect you to be so daring. How could you run around in such a place? If anything happens to you." Feng Jin paused. His gentle face became solemn and serious. His eyes were full of reproach and worry. The person in front of him was not a man. She was a real woman. When a man was bullied, he would at most say that he was flirtatious to comfort himself. However, if a woman got into trouble in such a place, her reputation would be ruined. Jiang Pingji smiled coldly. "Something happens. It's good enough if others don't offend me." Feng Jin frowned and suddenly moved closer. His face suddenly darkened. "What did you do just now? If you have the guts, you can go in and take a look." He hesitated for a moment, then lit the fire and stepped into the deep alley. After a while, he walked out with weak footsteps. You did it. He deserves to die. If he doesn't die, I don't know how many people will be hounded to death, Jiang Pingji said indifferently. Huayu, accompany me to a place. When you go there, you will know whether the person inside deserves to die or not. Or, you don't have to come. You can directly go to the magistrate and sue me. Feng Jin pursed his lips. Although the aristocratic families controlled the court and controlled the whole of Dongqing, it did not mean that the children of the aristocratic families were not guilty of killing people. What was the difference between such disregard for the lives of others and the vermin that the people cursed and hated? However, he did not say these words out loud. Because of admiration, Feng Jin's position was still on Jiang Pingji's side. If the other party could produce evidence, he could even let this matter pass. Where are we going? Feng Jin followed and asked, You have to produce evidence that is convincing enough. I won't cover for you. The sound of wooden clogs landing on the ground was particularly clear. It seemed to completely separate the deep alley from the extravagant world outside. Chapter 106. Why are we going to Mr. Wei Yuan's residence? Instead of answering, Jiang Pingji asked, Huayu, do you know Meng County in Sang Prefecture? Compared to Lu Lanting's closed environment, Feng Jin's tutor was more open. Meng County, Sang Prefecture. Of course I have some understanding, but what does this have to do with what happened before? Feng Jin was about to transform into 100,000 Ys. Have you heard of some scandals in Meng County, Sang Prefecture? For example, some women from aristocratic families were humiliated, but the culprit was never found. The moment Jiang Pingji opened her mouth, it was big news. Feng Jin's face turned green, red, and black, almost like a palette. Nonsense, how can a gentleman be interested in such news? Moreover, if your words spread out, do you want to be criticized by others? Landowning gentry ladies are noble. Even if it happened, it wouldn't be spread out so easily. He wanted to say that it was impossible, but when he thought of the dangerous experience of the noblewoman in Hejian County, he changed his mind. You're right, Jiang Pingji stopped in her tracks and quickly returned to normal. If such a thing really happened, with the current social atmosphere, the possibility of concealing it was far higher than publicizing it. Do you know something? Is it related to that man? Feng Jin hurriedly took 2 steps forward and stood shoulder to shoulder with Jiang Pingji. He then remembered that Jiang Pingji said she wanted to go to Wei Yuan's mansion, and his scalp went numb. You're still keeping me in suspense. Feng Jin was very curious. The audience in the live broadcast room expressed that this young man had a bright future. He had asked all their questions. Some old viewers in the streaming room had been following the stream for a long time. They knew that Jiang Pingji was good at analyzing. They were sure that she had found some clues. Otherwise, it was impossible for her to suddenly attack a stranger. However, she refused to explain. Everyone was dumbfounded. Fatty Big C, the man who was forced to take his lunchbox by the host, the bamboo booklet with unknown content, the scandal of a noble lady from Meng County in Sang Prefecture being humiliated, the host's teacher, Wei Yuan. When all these clues are connected, it feels extremely scary. Paid axing, now that you mention it, I seem to have thought of something. Could it be that the host's teacher is a monster in human form? Now, Ba, what kind of analysis is that? You can't just let your imagination run wild like that, right? The probability of Mr. Wei Yuan being the victim is much higher. Didn't they say that the gentleman had been on sick leave for a long time? Maybe it had something to do with this. For a moment, a game of You Guess was played in the live broadcast room. Based on the clues revealed by the streamer, they began to make wild guesses. As for which speculations were reliable and which were absurd, Jiang Pingji did not give an answer. Wei Yuan was stubborn and strict. He was strict with his students and never lowered his standards because of their age. Lu Lanting did not like going to the family school, but she did not like studying at home either. Wei Yuan was the main reason. According to Lu Lanting's memories, the little girl respected her teacher very much. However, the teacher was strict and unapproachable. He would often call for a teacher's whip and punish people. This made the sensitive Lu Lanting shy and reserved, and she liked to keep her words to herself. Before Lu Lanting's incident, Wei Yuan had applied for 3 days of leave from the Lu Manor. His illness had worsened and he had to postpone it. Under Takshu's reminder, Jiang Pingji had asked the servants to send gifts to Wei Yuan's manor, but she had never shown up in person. It's rare for me to go to the teacher's manor, but I have to go through the side door. Wei Yuan's manor was a long way from Lang Lang Alley. It took Jiang Pingji and Feng Jin a long time to reach it. By then, it was almost midnight. The sky was dark and the surroundings were silent. Occasionally, they could hear the sound of dogs barking. If you want to visit, you can come during the day. Feng Jin saw that Jiang Pingji was about to roll up her wide sleeves and climb over the wall. His face became distorted, but he did not dare to raise his voice. He could only suppress his voice. If you are caught, Wei Yuan was famous for his strictness. If his student climbed over the wall in the middle of the night, it would be fine if it was in the front yard, but if it was in the backyard, it would be like having mud fall into one's pants. Lu Lanting was not afraid of anything, but he still wanted his reputation. A bad friend could ruin his life. Jiang Pingji stood in the corner for a while and smiled at him. What are you afraid of? Come, I'll be your foothold. You can climb over first. Feng Jin was speechless. They looked at each other in silence for a while. Feng Jin took a deep breath. I don't believe you're that kind. Tell me, how are you going to trick me? Feng Jin clenched his teeth. Only now did he look like a teenager instead of an old and steady noble young master of an aristocratic family. Jiang Pingji smiled. Won't you know after you climb over? Feng Jin looked at her suspiciously, and the uneasiness in his heart grew stronger. Why don't you climb over first? There was something fishy going on. Jiang Pingji mocked him. You go first, and I'll follow. What if I climb over first? Will you be able to climb over? Don't pretend to be a hero in front of me. Feng Jin was speechless. It was tiring to have such an unreliable companion. Logically speaking, with Feng Jin's upbringing, he would never mess around with Jiang Pingji. But he was only a teenager. He had to maintain a steady image in front of others, and he needed some breathing space when he was alone. Not to mention that he admired Jiang Pingji and wanted to know what she was up to. He had fallen for her trap. Feng Jin gritted his teeth and nodded in agreement. He had left behind a dark history that could not be erased. Wei Yuan came from an ordinary family. His mansion was simple, and the walls were not high. Jiang Pingji lowered her body and crossed her arms, indicating for Feng Jin to step on her. Compared to her decisiveness and straightforwardness, Feng Jin was a bit hesitant. Even though his companion was bold and unrestrained, he always forgot her gender. But no matter how forgetful he was, he could not forget the difference in their genders. How can you be so impatient? Feng Jin muttered. He carefully held on to the uneven part of the wall. He had taken off his wooden clogs and was only wearing socks. He stepped on Jiang Pingji's crossed arms with his bare feet. He thought they would fall miserably, but he did not expect his feet to be so steady. He swore that he had never been so rude in his life. He used all his strength to crawl on the wall. Okay, I'm up. It's your turn now, right? Feng Jin looked down from the wall. It was a bit high, and he felt dizzy. Pfft! Under the wall, Jiang Pingji burst into laughter. It was especially obvious in the silent night. Feng Jin's heart skipped a beat. Huayu, why don't you take a look at the other side of the wall? Isn't there a bunch of people guarding there? Feng Jin was speechless. He had a bad feeling. He turned his head shakily and stretched his neck to the other side of the wall. Within the walls, they looked at each other. Lu Shi. He was furious. It's better for you to die than for me. If it doesn't work, then let's die together. Chapter 107. I heard you calling me. You don't have to be so loud. Everyone in the neighborhood knows. Without waiting for Feng Jin to really get angry, Jiang Pingji leaped up and stepped on the wall. Using the momentum, she climbed steadily to the top of the wall. Feng Jin hugged the wall with both of his hands, looking extremely flustered. He looked up at Jiang Pingji with trembling eyes, as if he was looking at his enemy. If he had known that Jiang Pingji was very naive, unreliable, he would have foolishly jumped into her trap. It was a great humiliation. Feng Jin was in a dilemma. He wished he could strangle his previous self to death. Sir, please don't blame me. Huayu and I came here today for a reason. We had no choice but to climb over the wall. Jiang Pingji said with a smile. When she jumped into the wall, she conveniently brought Feng Jin, who was clinging to the wall, down. Inside the walls, there were indeed a few servants guarding. Other than that, a middle-aged man dressed in plain clothes stood in front of them like a pine tree. He had a neatly trimmed beard and a pair of dark and gloomy eyes. He stared at Jiang Pingji with some suspicion and scrutiny. That was to be expected. For a student to climb over his teacher's wall in the middle of the night, and at such a sensitive time, anyone would be suspicious. However, Wei Yuan didn't pin the crime on her because her age didn't meet the criteria. In any case, Wei Yuan was still a student that he had personally taught. His student would not be a despicable person. Lanting, you've really harmed me this time. He had made a bad friend by mistake, and his 10 years of good reputation would be ruined in a day. Be good, don't throw a tantrum. Jiang Pingji dismissed him like she was coaxing a child. Feng Jin widened his eyes in astonishment, as if it was his first day meeting Jiang Pingji. Jiang Pingji bowed to Wei Yuan and greeted him respectfully, Sir. Wei Yuan didn't appreciate it. Instead, he coldly flicked his sleeves and dodged her bow, giving her a cold snort. He did believe that Lu Shi was not a despicable person, but that did not explain why the kid climbed over his wall in the middle of the night. Climbing over the wall was one thing, but observing the conversation between him and the strange young man, Lanting clearly knew that there was someone on the other side of the wall, yet he deliberately climbed over. Knowing one's mistake and making a mistake was even worse. Feng Jin straightened his wide sleeves and did not bother to tidy up his slightly disheveled appearance. He bowed deeply to Wei Yuan. Feng Jin greets Mr. Wei. There is a reason for what happened today. Mr. Wei, please calm down and wait for Lanting's explanation. Although Feng Jin could not wait to have a showdown with Jiang Pingji, the two of them were on the same boat. Before Wei Yuan's anger was extinguished, they had to work together and not drag each other down. Feng Jin. Your surname is Feng. But the Feng family of Shangyang. What does Minister Feng Xiande have to do with you? Feng was a rare surname. In Dongqing, when the Feng family was mentioned, most people would subconsciously think of the Feng family in Shangyang. Wei Yuan looked at Feng Jin's clothes and accessories. They were all expensive and hard to find treasures. It was obvious that his family was not poor. Feng Jin blushed and felt extremely embarrassed. He couldn't answer, but he also couldn't not answer. In the end, he blushed and said in a voice as soft as a mosquito, I am from the Feng family of Shangyang. The minister is my father. Wei Yuan was speechless. Faced with Wei Yuan's almost indifferent expression, some of the quick-witted spectators quickly moved their fingers, drowning his face in the barrage of insults. Now, oh my God, the son of the minister came to my house. Fatty Big C, blue skinny, Xiangdu, this guy's background is too big. How should we deal with him? Urgent, waiting online. Hongjun Laozu's Juhua, don't be fooled by my nonchalance. I'm actually burning with anxiety. How can I maintain my cold and aloof image? This guy in front of me doesn't play by the rules. I can't beat his father. Urgent, waiting online. Of course, there were also some insults in a more bizarre style. Sorcerer's girl offing, that guy is the son of the minister of Shangyang. Despicable, truly despicable. Jiang Pingji thought that Wei Yuan's expression and the barrage of comments made it even more delicious. She was secretly delighted, but her expression did not change. Instead, a chuckle beside her attracted everyone's attention. At that moment, she noticed that there was not only a fully armed servant beside Wei Yuan, but also a young man in his 20s. The man's eyebrows were slightly sharp, and his eyes were dark and lifeless. Being stared at by him made one feel an inexplicable chill in one's heart. His complexion and skin were a bit rough and dark yellow, but his appearance was extremely heroic. Even the gloomy coldness in his eyes couldn't make people ignore the advantage of his facial features. His face was deep, and his lips were slightly dry, with some white skin curling up. It was like a cracked riverbed that had been dry for a long time. The material of his clothes was not very good, and it was a little old. Not only did it not fit him well, but it had also been washed to the point of discoloration. His collar and cuffs were badly worn, but his hair was combed neatly, and he stood tall and straight, so one could not tell that he was in dire straits. He was in his 20s, and his wife and widower had died. He had come from the north, and it seemed that he was from a border city near the 3 tribes of the northern borderline. His father was of a different race, and his mother was a gentle and loving Chinese woman. The two of them were not happy, and his father had a bad habit of abusing his wife and children. He was cold and ruthless, and he had killed more than one person. His father was already dead, and he was probably the one who killed him. His palms were thick, and his knuckles were slightly deformed from years of martial arts practice. He was much stronger than Feng Jin. His socks were bleeding, and the wound was on his feet, but he could still maintain his upright posture without a change in expression. She liked his ruthlessness and forbearance. While Jiang Pingji was analyzing him, the young man was also sizing her up. After a long time, the young man shook his feather fan and faced Wei Yuan with regret. Master Gong Chao, it's not him. Wei Yuan's face darkened. A few servants still surrounded Jiang Pingji and Feng Jin, not daring to let their guard down. He trusted his student, so he did not doubt the young man's judgment. But he could not think of a reason why his student would climb over the wall in the middle of the night. Master, I came here today because of an urgent matter. If not, I would not have to resort to such a method. Jiang Pingji didn't mind, but Wei Yuan couldn't bear to see such a shocking act. If this matter were to spread out, who knew what kind of people would talk about it? He would not be able to face anyone, and Lu Lanting would be ruined. No matter what the student wanted to talk to him about, he had chosen to climb over the wall instead of using the main door. It would be strange if someone like him could stand it. Feng Jin treated himself as the background and kept his head down. He was implicated by Lu Shi, the scammer, in this matter. Oh, I want to hear what reason you have. Chapter 108. If the student could give in and apologize, Wei Yuan would tolerate it for Lu Shi's sake, no matter how unhappy he was. But now, he was so angry that he laughed. He had to hear what the stubborn student had to say. What was so important that she had to climb over the wall in the middle of the night? Jiang Pingji was not afraid at all. Instead, she looked confident. The young man with the feather fan raised his hand. His eyes flashed with interest as he said to Wei Yuan, "Master Gong Chao, why don't you go to the main hall and listen to what this young man has to say? It would be best if you could dismiss your attendants. I'm sure this young man will not disappoint you." Wei Yuan was shocked to hear this. However, he was also a wise old man. He quickly composed himself and put on a stern face. "Come here." Jiang Pingji stopped him. "There is no need to rush. Before I explain, I have a presumptuous request. I hope you will agree to it." "Speak." This student would like to take the liberty to meet the womenfolk in Sir's backyard, including a group of female servants. Wei Yuan was angered by her insatiable behavior. If it were not for the young man's words, he would have started scolding her. A 12-year-old was considered half an adult in this era. Many of them had their own families. Naturally, Wei Yuan did not see Jiang Pingji as a child. He saw her as an adult man. An adult male had climbed over his wall in the middle of the night and even said that he wanted to see the women in his house. Faced with such straightforward humiliation, it was already a sign of his self-restraint that he didn't lash out at him, kick him out, or send him to the magistrate's office. "Love go little Shuanet," Chu. The young man narrowed his eyes and looked at Jiang Pingji. He had an intuition. "Master Gong Chao, you'd better agree. This young man did not come with evil intentions. I'm afraid it is for your own good." Wei Yuan, who had been furious, calmed down by the young man's words. This change made Jiang Pingji and Feng Jin look at him carefully. Jiang Pingji had exposed the young man's past. The young man felt a chill in his heart, but he could not tell why. Wei Yuan's face darkened. He gritted his teeth and agreed. "Just listen to Wenjing once." Jiang Pingji laughed to herself. It seemed that the teacher's sick leave was fake, and the haunting in the backyard was real. According to this person's temperament, if he found out that there were strange men's clothes or traces of activity in his concubine's room, he would be so angry that his blood pressure would soar. The reason why he had taken leave until now was probably because he had not finished with this mess. He wanted to catch the adulterer, but he ran into her. Wei Yuan walked in front with big strides. Jiang Pingji followed behind him at a steady pace. She was right next to the young man. She smiled and asked tentatively, "How should I address you, Lang Jun?" Feng Jin's expression seemed normal, but there was a hint of displeasure in it. His bad friend had tricked him, and before he could even give him an explanation, he had already hooked up with a weird-looking outsider. How unfair. "I am Qiguan Rang." Jiang Pingji frowned. Although she hated the messy names in this era, she still asked out of habit. "What's your courtesy name?" The young man's eyes were still gloomy, and he said mercilessly, "My young friend, our relationship is shallow. We don't even have a courtesy name. In other words," he said, "I don't know you that well. Don't try to get close to me." Jiang Pingji's heart skipped a beat. She lowered her voice and asked at a volume that only she, the young man, and Feng Jin could hear. "Don't say that. Strictly speaking, you are my future brother-in-law. Why do you have to treat me like an outsider?" Feng Jin listened attentively, and then he looked confused. "Lanting has a sister." After asking, he came back to his senses. She did have a mistress's daughter, but she seemed to be less than 9 years old. Feng Jin was dumbfounded. However, when her words fell into the young man's ears, it was no different from a sudden clap of thunder. His mind went blank for a moment. She interrupted him and repeated her question. "What's your courtesy name?" If she wanted to know, she had to know. Even if he did not want to answer, she would find a way to make him answer. The young man was speechless. After a while, the young man calmed himself down and said calmly, "Didn't you hear him?" Jiang Pingji raised her eyelids and rolled her eyes. It's different when you introduce yourself and when others mention it in passing. The young man took a deep breath and faintly sympathized with Feng Jin. That must be how he felt when he was tricked. My name is Qiguan Rang. My courtesy name is Wenjing. How should I address you? Lu Shi. That's it. The young man waited for a while, but he did not hear anything else. His expression became slightly twisted as he suddenly remembered Feng Jin mentioning Lanting. That must be Lu Shi's courtesy name. Although they had only met for a short while, the young man had the urge to raise his fan and slap her. She was asking for a beating. Jiang Pingji looked at Wei Yuan's silhouette in front of her with a complicated expression. Wenjing, are you curious about how I know that you are looking for a son-in-law? Qiguan Rang nodded. He was indeed curious. Wei Yuan had only mentioned it to him vaguely, and no one else knew about it. Jiang Pingji revealed it as soon as she arrived, so it was impossible for Qiguan Rang not to be curious. Could she be eavesdropping? That was impossible. Jiang Pingji was about to speak, but she suddenly turned to Feng Jin and said, "Don't listen to indecent things. Cover your ears." Feng Jin was speechless. He was innocent. Although he was also curious, since Jiang Pingji had said so, the inside story was probably not suitable for people other than Qiguan Rang to listen. He obediently raised his hands to cover his ears and purposely took a few steps back to prevent himself from accidentally hearing something. His pitiful appearance instantly aroused the sympathy of a group of otakus overflowing with motherly love in the live broadcast room. Gifts flooded the screen like a stream of water. Seeing that, Jiang Pingji wanted to bully Feng Jin even more. What should she do? Wenjing's arrival at the Wei residence was not at the right time. It coincidentally happened to be a scandal that outsiders should not listen to. Jiang Pingji whispered the contents that shocked Qiguan Rang. This content is not only related to Master Wei's concubines in his harem. More seriously, it may even implicate his daughters, who are my two junior sisters. Thinking about it, even if the two ladies are fine, their reputations will be ruined in a day. Following that, Jiang Pingji calmly revealed a series of high-powered information. Wenjing, you lost your wife at a young age, and you were born in the border of the northern borderline. The people there are tough, and they don't care much about a woman's reputation. At least, they don't care about it as much as the noble sons of Dongqing's aristocratic families. With such a thing happening, no matter if it's the eldest or the second lady, I'm afraid it will be difficult for them to get married in the future. If such a thing happened to the daughters of the aristocratic families, it would not be too difficult for them to get married. Of course, they could not be picky about the conditions of their husbands. They could either marry a son of the first wife with a slightly higher status, or a son of a concubine who was hardworking and talented but had a lower status. Chapter 109. Mr. Wei understands this. He doesn't want to ruin the rest of his daughter's life, but he also doesn't want them to live the rest of their lives in solitary confinement, so he has to find another way out. He thinks highly of your talent and admires you. He might even want to betroth his daughter to you. Now that this has happened, there's no way he'll let you go. I said you're his future brother-in-law. What's wrong with that? Qiguan Rang was silent for a while. Or rather, he was speechless. The young man named Lu Shi's analysis was correct, but he still had a few doubts. Jiang Pingji moved closer and said mysteriously, "It's the first lady, right?" Qiguan Rang glanced at her. He had one more doubt. He walked away quickly, not wanting to see the gossipy expression on Jiang Pingji's face. He wanted some peace and quiet. Lovelorn front Lianming, why does he feel sorry for Qiguan Rang? The streamer exposed his secrets the moment they met. I guess he's feeling a little uneasy. I don't care if Delete doesn't stop or if he's glad. I'm glad I don't live in an environment where there's no streamer. Even though it was fun to watch the live stream and they could even complain about it on the bullet screen, watching the streamer bully others or tear apart her own viewers, it was all from the perspective of a bystander. It was just a show to kill time. If there was such a person in real life, it would be horrifying to see through one's secrets the moment they met. A secret is a secret because only a few people know about it. However, Jiang Pingji's actions broke this rule. Naturally, it would cause others to be afraid and ostracize her. She doesn't play by the rules. Secrets have nowhere to hide from her. She's a monster. Love 100%, I checked the surnames on Baidu. If it's a surname, it should be Qiguan, right? Tong Qi, 2 times. 100 Ghosts Night Walk, _ smiley face 3 angle, _ I'm just an ordinary person. I'm happy watching, so I don't think too much. Tudu Feicho, same. As long as you're happy. We're just watching the live stream. Why think so much? Streamer Jing Shanghua, we're watching the live stream from the streamer's perspective. The viewing experience should be from the streamer's perspective and role. If it was a stupid host who got bullied and stepped on everywhere, who would be able to watch it? Anyway, I'm feeling all sorts of good now. Streamer's side of me, 23333. After watching the live broadcast, I feel like my IQ has increased by several %. Streamers back on me, who's better at topping up IQ? Palace Intrigue live stream helps you. Jiang Pingji was speechless. No matter what, she couldn't face these demonic audiences and their IDs. Although Feng Jin did not hear what the two of them said, he could not help but remember how Jiang Pingji had threatened him when he saw Qiguan Rang's reaction. Suddenly, he felt sympathy for her and complained to her, "You scared him. You're scared just like that. What shall we do then?" She said significantly. "Shall we have to be alarmed every day?" Liu Siji Lianming, who's so surprised? Jiang Pingji was speechless. He had a bad premonition. Even though Wei Yuan was extremely unhappy, he still followed Jiang Pingji's instructions and asked the womenfolk to come out and look at them through the thin screen. She frowned and shook her head. Wei Yuan's face darkened and he ordered the maidservants to bring them back. Next were the female servants. The female servants were not as refined as the female servants, and it was fine for them to be stared at by an outsider once or twice. Therefore, they were simply allowed to gather in a relatively wide corridor. The surrounding servants each held a torch, brightly illuminating the courtyard. Feng Jin saw that she was serious and did not dare to interrupt her thoughts. Qiguan Rang looked at Jiang Pingji seriously, as if he was trying to read some useful information from her face. However, the results surprised him. He was a 12-year-old boy, the age when his emotions should be the most exposed. Even if he had been educated by an aristocratic family, his age and experience made it impossible for him to be as impenetrable as an old fox. People would always be able to find a loophole. But the boy's situation made him tremble with fear, and he was secretly very excited. The more he could not find out, the more it meant that the boy was full of secrets. In Qiguan Rang's opinion, there were two extraordinary people in Dongqing in recent years. One was Master Yuanjing of Langjia, who single-handedly took back the 3 cities by the border. The other was Liu Shi of Hejian, who had worked hard for many years to bring Hu County back to life. He had achieved a feat that many capable officials of the previous Xia dynasty could not achieve. Liu Shi was Liu Shi's son. He had the demeanor of his father, but he was also a hidden person. Lanting, what did you find out? It was rare for Qiguan Rang to put on a stiff smile. The corners of his lips were raised unnaturally. Perhaps he was used to wearing a cold expression all year round. The emotion of smiling was too foreign to him. Therefore, when he smiled, it was more of a fake smile. It was strange and treacherous. Of course I found out. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to answer to the master today, would I? After she finished speaking, Jiang Pingji got up and walked to the corridor. She walked straight into the crowd of servants, her eyes fixed on one target. It was a woman who looked to be in her early 30s. Her skin was brown, and there were 3 wrinkles between her eyebrows. There were obvious wrinkles at the corners of her eyes. She looked a few years older than her actual age. Her shoulders were slightly bowed, and she looked extremely honest. Her fingertips that were exposed outside her sleeves were red and purple. Before she was called there, she was diligently washing clothes with well water. At first glance, she was just an ordinary servant. She had the dullness and diligence of an honest person. There was nothing special about her. If there was anything wrong with her, it would be that her appearance was average, but her facial features were kind. She gave people a feeling that she was easy to get along with. However, some people were born with a strong affinity. That could not be used as evidence that there was something wrong with her. Qiguan Rang quickly glanced at the target Jiang Pingji was staring at. He was slightly suspicious. Why did she look for a servant? Could it be? Qiguan Rang's eyes turned quickly. His eyes were wide open because of the answer that flashed in his mind. So that was the truth. Qiguan Rang's eyes flashed. He opened his mouth and said, "Catch that woman." Jiang Pingji walked toward her. The servant kept her head down, as if she was the most ordinary servant. There was no flaw in her expression. However, her nerves were secretly on edge. Until Jiang Pingji was in front of her, her nerves were already at their most sensitive. At that moment, Qiguan Rang's voice exploded in her ears. Or rather, he was completely flustered. He knew that his identity was exposed, and he did not mean to trick him. "You still want to escape?" The person panicked. He quickly grabbed a servant beside him and pushed him toward Jiang Pingji. The crowd was in an uproar. The order was instantly chaotic. Chapter 110. Everything happened in the blink of an eye. Before the crowd could recover from the shock, they were plunged into another wave of fear. Someone's dead. No one knew who shouted, but the crowd was as quiet as chickens. They silently retreated, forming a large circle. "What are you shouting for?" "She's not dead yet," Jiang Pingji scolded. The crowd could not help but move to the sides to make a path for her. The maid who was pushed had just woken up from the scare. She was distracted just now and suddenly felt a huge force pushing her in another direction. For a moment, she was so scared that her heart almost jumped out of her throat. Then, she fell steadily into a thin but strong embrace. She raised her head shyly and stole a glance at Jiang Pingji's appearance. From this angle, she looked as delicate and pretty as a lady. She thought blankly. Then, as if she had touched a fire, she quickly left Jiang Pingji. "Thank you for saving me, Lang Jun." Her voice was as soft as a mosquito's. She did not dare to raise her voice. "It's good that you're fine. You and the rest of the servants should go and rest. It's best if you forget what happened tonight." Jiang Pingji stared coldly at the servant who was lying on the ground, her hands covering her bleeding neck. Her voice was cold as ice. The maid did not care. She timidly glanced at Mr. Wei Yuan. After getting his approval, she followed Jiang Pingji's orders. After all, they were not servants of the Lus. If they listened to Jiang Pingji's orders without hesitation, Wei Yuan would probably feel uncomfortable. "This is clearly a woman," Wei Yuan only left his trusted butler behind. The rest of the servants were dismissed. Jiang Pingji saw the sandalwood fan that she had thrown and cut the servant's neck. She bent down to pick it up and wiped the blood off with a handkerchief. How could it be a woman? If you don't believe me, why don't you take off all your clothes and check? Wei Yuan nodded and signaled for the butler to help. Jiang Pingji looked down and stood aside. She was like a spectator in the live stream room. However, the viewers in the live stream room were not calm. They saw the butler roll up his sleeves and touch the servant's crotch. He seemed to pinch it. His face scrunched up like a chrysanthemum flower, and then a look of horror appeared on his face. The scene was too intense. Everything happened too suddenly. They were so shocked that they forgot to comment. Hongjun Laozu's chrysanthemum, */w***, oh, my eyes are going blind. First, the host had stepped on the other party's balls and **ck. Then, an elderly man had touched a woman who looked like a middle-aged woman. Today's live broadcast was too dirty. Streamer Zheng Chaoshengguo, I don't care about anything else. I just want to know how it feels. Although the live stream was very dirty, the old driver in the live stream room seemed to be even dirtier. Things like moral integrity were lost after a while. The system, which had not said anything for a while, was bad. The system translator, Lu editor, ***, the viewers in the live stream room are so dirty. Can I control their mouths and their hands? As a system, it's your dereliction of duty if you don't censor certain words. What does that have to do with me? Jiang Pingji pushed the blame away. The system, she sounded reasonable. It could not think of a reason to refute her. While they were bickering, the old butler stood up and walked to Wei Yuan's side. He nodded solemnly. It's really a man. Wei Yuan almost fainted from anger when he heard the answer. He did not have any impression of the servants in the backyard, but he knew that those who did laundry had the right to enter the inner and outer courtyards. In other words, the culprit who bullied his concubine, made him a cuckold, and ruined his daughter's reputation was the wailing bastard in front of him. He was still angry when he remembered that he had accidentally found a male object when he was resting in his concubine's room. What made him feel even more humiliated was that the scandal had already reached the ears of someone who should not have known. Qiguan Rang was the son-in-law that he had his eyes on. He came from a poor family and had a rough life. He was also a widower who had lost his wife. Although his eldest daughter was a bit of a loss, it was not shameful for her to be with him. He had observed Qiguan Rang for a long time and felt that he could be trusted. Since Qiguan Rang was his future son-in-law, even if it was shameful, it was still his family. For the sake of his poor daughter, he was willing to let go of his pride. What harm was there in enduring it? His student, Lu Shi, was also involved. He seemed to be in the know. Otherwise, how could he explain the kid's actions that night? Was he going to make Lu Shi his son-in-law as well? What was more depressing was that if the kid had not climbed over the wall in the middle of the night, the fake woman in front of them would have escaped and they would not have been able to find the culprit. Therefore, he couldn't blame himself, but if he didn't blame himself, he would be holding back his anger, and he would always feel embarrassed. His illustrious reputation had been completely thrown away tonight. As he thought about it, Wei Yuan's usually straight back could not help but slump a little. It was as if he was in his twilight years. Even though Feng Jin did not know what had happened, based on the information that Jiang Pingji had revealed and her reaction, he could roughly guess the truth. When the housekeeper confirmed that the servant was a man, he wished he had been blind. Lu Shi, this naive and sweet, unreliable friend of his, had actually dragged him into this kind of scandal. Even though he was able to keep his mouth shut, Wei Yuan was probably already holding a grudge against him. It would have been fine if Feng Jin didn't move, but once he did, Wei Yuan noticed him. Wei Yuan was speechless. "Oh, I forgot there's another one." Streamer sighed Xianghua. "Even though I know I shouldn't laugh at a time like this, I can't help but want to laugh. This Master Wei Yuan is so unlucky. His wives and concubines are being bullied and he's being cuckolded." Streamer's back Xianghua. "Even though I want to laugh too, I'm more concerned about my wives and concubines." Yes, they were watching the live stream for fun. To put it simply, they were watching the gossip of others for entertainment. But the person at the center of the incident might not be so happy. Needless to say, Wei Yuan seemed to be an old-fashioned ancient Confucian. His wives and concubines were touched by a man outside. Even if he was still innocent, as an ancient man, he would definitely have a knot in his heart. So, what about the unlucky women in the backyard? Based on the streamer's conversation with Qiguan Rang, Wei Yuan treated his daughters well. He was willing to plan for the rest of their lives for them. But wives and concubines were not daughters. It was a matter of a man's dignity and the color of his hat. How could he be so kind? It was one thing to watch the spectacle, but it was another thing to feel sympathy or not. Chapter 111. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. Jiang Pingji looked coldly at the series of comments and countless large donations on the live streaming screen. Most of them hoped that she could help the innocent women who were implicated. She laughed in her heart, but at the same time, she was somewhat silent. It was fun to watch the drama and treat the pain of others as entertainment. But the sympathy and actions they showed after the incident were not completely fake. More than half of them were sincere. What a contradictory group of people. Jiang Pingji did not respond to the audience. Instead, she looked at Wei Yuan with interest. She guessed that the teacher had started to think that she knew about his scandal. Even though she did know about it, according to her previous actions, the situation could still be turned around. She took a step forward and kicked the artificial dumpling away with her wooden clogs, forcing it to turn over. She asked softly, "How do you plan to deal with this criminal?" Wei Yuan's face had turned black. It was as if he was on the verge of exploding. "Kill him and feed him to the dogs. Do you want to keep him alive to harm others?" Wei Yuan answered subconsciously. When he regained his composure, he realized that his tone was filled with violence. It was a far cry from his usual demeanor. As for reporting it to the authorities. If he reported it to the authorities, it would be the same as announcing his family's scandal to the world. He would be too ashamed to live. The servant, who was tied up like a dumpling and gagged, curled up on the ground and whimpered as if she was begging for mercy. "Kill him and feed him to the dogs. That's a good idea." Jiang Pingji smiled faintly. Feng Jin and Qiguan Rang, who were beside her, gave her a scrutinizing look. Feng Jin reacted quickly. After witnessing Jiang Pingji's ruthless methods, he did not expect her to be kind. Qiguan Rang, on the other hand, was shocked and curious. Shouldn't a pampered noble son be so indecisive? Shouldn't he be soft-hearted all the time? But this person was different. Not only was he not kind, but he carried a shocking coldness and hostility. "However, I came here tonight for this person. Please forgive me, teacher, and let him live for the time being." Jiang Pingji bowed and apologized. Under Wei Yuan's suspicious gaze, she explained, "Tonight, I was having a drink with my father at the Yingchen brothel. I happened to see an old maid bullying a lady in the brothel. I didn't think much of it at first, but the more I looked at her, the more I felt there was something strange about her." Wei Yuan was speechless. Wait a minute, I seem to have heard something very powerful. If he hadn't heard wrongly, the kid had said that he and his father, Lu Shi, the father and son, were drinking in a brothel. Rang also felt that his worldview had been refreshed. A father and son going to that kind of place. Father and son going to that kind of place. Jiang Pingji didn't care about their strange gazes. Anyway, Lu Shi would take all the blame. Out of curiosity, I followed them, but I saw a great show of people turning into living beings. After the other party took off his clothes one by one, a gray-haired old woman who was sweeping the floor turned into a man of about 30 years of age with a protruding mouth and monkey cheeks. She had wanted to leave, but she had disturbed them and captured them. After inquiring, I found out the truth. Because of this, I had to climb over the wall in the middle of the night. If I had waited until tomorrow, I'm afraid. Jiang Pingji simplified the process. She also beautified the interrogation as questioning. There was nothing bloody about it. Then, she took out a small roll of bamboo slips and presented it to Wei Yuan. Based on what I know, there are more than just these two men who know of this disguise method and blend into the backyard of others. Why do they do it? Maybe they are trying to escape from the authorities. They are probably from Tsang Prefecture's Meng County. They sneaked to Hejin recently. Jiang Pingji said it in a businesslike manner. She was just short of telling Wei Yuan that she had no idea what was going on in his backyard. Of course, this was just an obvious cover. Although it was useless, covering it was better than not covering it. Wei Yuan took the bamboo scroll and looked through it. His face changed from anger to ashen, and then to silence. Although he was silent, the anger in his heart was stronger than before. These vermin. After a long time, Wei Yuan's face turned ashen as he smashed the bamboo scroll in his hand. Jiang Pingji looked down and did not have the slightest intention of picking up the booklet. How is this a proper scroll? It's the great achievements of those guys. On a certain day, they would target a woman or a girl, disguise themselves as a woman, and try to sneak into the family. They would patiently achieve their goal. Not only would they describe the woman's appearance, age, figure, and skin feel, but they would also proudly write down their thoughts after the deed was done. They would also summarize the pros and cons of the operation. Of course, they would also summarize their personal experiences, such as how to silence the victim or how to coax them to have sex with them multiple times. Occasionally, they would mock the man of the house for not being able to satisfy the woman and praise themselves. But that was not the point. The point was the origin of the women. 30% of them were ordinary women from Meng County, Tsang Prefecture, or women who had been widowed for a long time. The other 70% were the concubines of rich merchants and poor families. There were even some unmarried girls who could not escape the clutches of those people. What's more, Wei Yuan even saw some of his acquaintances in the scroll. When he thought of his acquaintances in Meng County, Tsang Prefecture, doing the same thing, he felt anger and sympathy. Fortunately, he did not see the contents of his own backyard. Otherwise, he would not be able to face his students. These people were originally from Meng County, Tsang Prefecture. They are arrogant and familiar with their methods. It's not the first time they've done this. What a joke. If they were not familiar with it, they would not have been able to write such a concise and comprehensive afterthought. In the other room, Rang had already picked up the scroll and skimmed through it. After Wei Yuan calmed down, he frowned. If the contents are true, then the truth must be shocking. Jiang Pingji snorted. It's not just shocking. Look at this scroll. What did you discover about the materials used to make the bamboo slips? Look at the handwriting. Although it is not the work of a master, you can see that it is a solid foundation. If it was not for hard work, how could one have such skills? Besides, these families are all famous people in Meng County, Tsang Prefecture. Their backyards may not be as thick as an iron bucket, but it is not a place that ordinary servants can enter. How can a lowly servant easily come into contact with an unmarried wife or a married woman? Wei Yuan did not say anything. Qiguan Rang sat up straight and waved the feather fan in his hand. His cold eyes shone brightly. Everyone knew that these vermin who had been harassing women in other people's backyards for fun had a powerful background. Chapter 112. I have a guess, but I haven't verified it yet, so I can't say it out loud. Qiguan Rang looked down and turned to Jiang Pingji. Lanting came to visit late at night because she got the information from that person. If that's the case, do you have any clues about the others? Jiang Pingji shook her head. No. If she didn't know the exact number of people, she wouldn't have needed to go to Wei Yuan's place to catch the person. Those people were very cautious and had almost no contact with each other. If you trust me, you can hand the person over to me. I guarantee that he will tell you everything about his ancestors. As Jiang Pingji spoke, a faint smile hung on the corner of her lips. It made one shudder with fear, and Qiguan Rang secretly glanced at her. No matter how angry Wei Yuan was, the matter had already been settled, and it seemed that there were some unspeakable scandals involved. Wei Yuan's surname was Wei and he was related to Wei Jingxian's family, but he wasn't as prominent as Wei Jingxian. If it was just a normal rapist, he could just kill him in secret. But if it was serious, he couldn't do anything about it. Up to you. She was very familiar with interrogations, but other than the viewers in the streaming room who were lucky enough to witness it once, no one else had seen it. Jiang Pingji didn't plan to let others see it to avoid ruining Lu Shi's reputation. Then I'll leave first. I'll come back to you after I get some information. Then she led the others away. Feng Jin stayed with Wei Yuan and Jiang Pingji. Qiguan Rang watched her leave. Suspicion flashed in his eyes, and he kept hitting his knees with his feather fan. Second Lang Junlu's way of doing things is a bit strange. He's completely different from what Mr. Wei said. Feng Jin was lost in thought when he heard Qiguan Rang's words. He snapped back to reality and looked at Qiguan Rang. Lanting is a bit out of line, but it's not strange. She's still a child, and she's at an age where her temperament isn't stable. If she's not restrained, she'll go astray. If there's a big change, it's normal for her to change. Feng Jin defended Jiang Pingji gently, which made Qiguan Rang look at him. Accident. Wei Yuan suddenly remembered that due to family matters, it had been a long time since he had gone to the Lu residence to teach a student. He didn't know much about this obedient and sensible student, who he rarely worried about. He didn't even know what had happened to make this student seem like a stranger. In the past, Lu Shi had always treated him with respect and even fear. Now, he was still respectful, but it was more on the surface. Mister, you don't know. A few days ago, the bandits in the mountains ran into Lanting and a group of noble ladies in Hejin County and took them away. If not for Lanting's quick wit, they might not have been able to escape unscathed. It must have been that incident that caused Lanting's temperament to change. Feng Jin didn't know what kind of person Lu Shi was in the past, and he didn't deliberately dig into it. What he saw was the willful and cunning Jiang Pingji. I've never heard of such a thing. Wei Yuan's expression softened, and there was even a hint of guilt on his face. A teacher for a day, a father for life. This saying was not only useful for students, it was also useful for teachers. Even though he always felt that his students' comprehension was too low, his reaction was too slow, and his spirituality was insufficient, he was still a student that he had taught for many years. He had feelings for his student. Something so big had happened to him, but as a teacher, he had neglected it. On the other side, Jiang Pingji had neatly forced the man into a state of confusion. This time, the audience in the streaming room was much calmer than the previous time. Or perhaps they were mentally prepared. Another important reason was that Jiang Pingji's behavior was in line with their subconscious idea of using violence to curb violence. If they sympathized with the beast that had harmed so many innocent women, who would sympathize with the poor women that had been abused? The ancient times were not their era. If a woman were to experience such a thing, it would be equivalent to ruining the rest of her peaceful life. Therefore, there was no need to sympathize with the beast. However, even though they didn't want to punish Jiang Pingji, they couldn't stand the way she did things while commenting on the bullet screen. It was as scary as the ring of death. They were scared, but they couldn't bear to leave the streaming room. They could only use the bullet screen to protect themselves from the horrible images. Wuliang Tianzuan, high energy ahead, bullet screen protection. All the mighty ones will defend with me. Now, prosperity, democracy, civility, harmony, freedom, equality, justice, rule of law, patriotism, professionalism, integrity, friendliness. Similar duplicated bullet screens filled the entire live streaming screen, forcing Jiang Pingji to temporarily turn them off. What's your name? Jiang Pingji asked the most basic question. Lin Zhouzi. Her mouth twitched. The previous one was Lin Gosheng, and this one was Lin Zhouzi. Honestly, were they really not picked up by their parents from the garbage dump or given to them as a gift? It was such a name. Because of this new idea, Jiang Pingji did not follow the previous direction. Instead, she chose a different path. Do you know where the other accomplices are? As she spoke, she took out a roll of cloth from the man's clothes. There was also a small bamboo scroll inside. The contents of the scroll were similar to the previous one. They were all women from Meng County. The only difference was that the names of these women were different. At the end of the scroll, she saw some information about Wei Yuan's residence. Not only did the man in front of him have his eyes on Wei Yuan's concubine, but he was also drooling over her two beautiful daughters. She flipped through Lu Shi's memories related to Wei Yuan's daughters, and her face darkened. Her eyes were so cold that it was as if she was looking at a dead man. She lifted her hand and removed the bamboo scroll. Then, she crushed it with her bare hands. After a while, she threw the crushed bamboo scroll on the ground and used her wooden clogs to cover it up. Following Jiang Pingji's questions, the man told her everything he knew. His expression was muddled, and white foam kept coming out of the corner of his mouth. His face turned from red to pale, and then from pale to green. His breathing was sometimes rapid and sometimes slow. Jiang Pingji knew very well that it was impossible for a normal person to survive torture in ancient times. Not only would torture bring great harm to the body, but it would also cause a devastating blow to the fragile spiritual realm. Moreover, this kind of collapse was irreversible. Even in her era, when the medical development of the spiritual realm was so advanced, there were not many lucky people who could recover. There was not much time left for her to ask questions. Jiang Pingji picked out a few important ones. Chapter 113. Qiguan Rang was born poor, but he had a lot of experience in the borderlands. At a young age, he already knew how to protect himself. He wandered between the various forces in the borderlands with ease. His knowledge and experience were abnormally rich. It was not something that a young man like Feng Jin, who only had theories, could compare to. At first, Feng Jin felt that this person was difficult to get along with. However, after exchanging a few words, he suddenly became interested. After a few rounds of probing, Zhang Xian felt as if he had met his match. During the conversation, the way he addressed him also changed from the distant Lang Jun to Wenjing. In ancient times, the friendship between men, especially scholars, often developed from that instant of palpitation. When I heard what Wenjing said earlier, I had a guess in my heart, but I haven't been able to verify it. What is it? Qiguan Rang tapped the feather fan in his hand on his knee and said in a serious tone, "Huayu, do you know the Meng family from Meng County in Song Prefecture?" Feng Jin didn't understand why their conversation had anything to do with the Meng family from Meng County in Songzhou. Before he could reveal a puzzled expression, an extremely bold guess suddenly flashed in his mind, and he was so shocked that he almost lost his composure. "Wen Zheng, how could you?" Qiguan Rang smiled coldly. His eyes became even colder and gloomier. Feng Jin's doubt was within his expectations. After all, any aristocratic family would find this kind of speculation humiliating. Our ancestors were brave, and patriotic, but that doesn't mean that our descendants can inherit their legacy. He smiled coldly. The Meng family of Meng County in Song Prefecture. "Ha, I heard from Huayu that you left Shangjing for some reason and didn't contact your family much. You probably haven't heard of it yet, right?" Who was the Meng family from Meng County in Song Prefecture? The most famous of them all was the ancestor of the Meng family, Meng Jing, Meng Ziliang, the founding noble of the Xia dynasty. He was praised as a white dragon among men by the founder of the Xia dynasty. In later generations, he was also known as the God of War. There were ancestral halls dedicated to him in all 5 countries. With such a tyrannical ancestor, the Meng clan had been greatly favored by the emperor since the Xia dynasty. They had tens of thousands of households, which had been inherited until the end of the Xia dynasty. Even when the 5 countries were divided into Xia, the status of the Meng family was still transcendent. This was not the original name of Meng County, but because of the Meng family, it was changed to the surname Meng. Of course, just as Qiguan Rang had ridiculed, the Mengs had a powerful ancestor who had laid down an illustrious family business. However, it did not mean that the younger generation of the Mengs could be so powerful. Not only could they not push the family to the peak, but they could also become more mediocre and absurd, living off their old capital. A gentleman's grace can be severed from 5 generations. Feng Jin was not stupid. He could guess what Qiguan Rang meant. The culprit who toyed with so many women and children in Meng County and even harmed the women in Hejin County should be from the Meng family. Never heard of what? Feng Jinsu knew what kind of people her age were like, but she still couldn't believe Qiguan Rang's guess. Naturally, it's about the matter of Tsang Prefecture's Meng County's commandant becoming a bandit and setting fire to the prefectural governor's manor. Qiguan Rang looked at Feng Jin's face and said with a malicious tone, "The county military chief is a retainer of the Mengs. He has always been loyal to the Mengs, but now he has rebelled against his former master and burned down the governor's manor. The reason for this has yet to be clarified." Coincidentally, the names of the official wife and daughter of the county military chief were written on the bamboo slips. "Huayu, do you think there is a connection between the two?" Feng Jin's lips moved. He was usually eloquent, but at that moment, his mind was a mess. He didn't know where to start. "Say no more. There is a connection." Just as Feng Jin's mind was in a mess, Jiang Pingji's cold voice came from outside. He subconsciously turned his head, only to see that thin person stride into the room from outside, and then kneel down in a slightly rough manner. However, at this moment, no one dared to express any dissatisfaction, because her face was already about to turn ashen. She didn't dare to mention it. "Oh." Qiguan Rang rubbed his feather fan on his palm. What did Lanting find out? Wei Yuan, who was at the side, became the background. Or rather, he was dumbfounded by the bombs that Qiguan Rang and Jiang Pingji threw at him. There were 4 noble families in Dongqing, the Feng family of Shangyang, the Wang family of Langjia, the Xia family of Longning, and the Meng family of Zhangzhou. In the hearts of the people of Dongqing, although the first 3 families had a long history, their reputation was far from the Mengs, which had the ancestor of the god of war. Now, the two people in front of him were telling him that the bastard who made him a cuckold was most likely related to the Mangs. There was too much information. His brain was overloaded, and he couldn't wrap his head around it. According to the confession, the one who led them was a little bastard named Meng Liang. Huayu, do you have any impression of him? Feng Jin said, I do. I have a good friend named Meng Heng. He is the eldest son of the Mangs, and his second brother is Meng Liang. However, Meng Heng is polite and knows when to advance or retreat. He is a rare gentleman, which shows how his family is. How can he have such a good brother? Someone who can be friends with a rich man is naturally a rich man. Similarly, someone who can be friends with a noble family must be from a similar background. Jiang Pingji snorted. Huayu, I don't like your argument. The 9 sons of a dragon are all different. Your friend is a good one, but who can guarantee that his brother is the same? Even if they were raised together, there will be differences. Feng Jin was speechless. According to the confession, Meng Liang has been a prostitute since he was young. His mother indulged him, and his father spoiled him. When he was 11 years old, all the maids and servants in the house were touched. None of them escaped. But this person likes the new and hates the old. It has become a habit for him to rape women. Although the audience in the streaming room already knew some of the inside information, they were still stunned by the valiant young man. Hongjun Laozu's Juhua, #cry. Others have been with thousands of women at the age of 11. Iron bars are ground into needles. I am still single. Guimin's husband Baeo Boshan, #cry. Single +1. Are there any sisters who pity me? Zaixia Yiliankin, Yiliankin, am convinced. Zaixia Zhao Ritian, Zhao Ritian, am convinced too. Zaixia Long Outyan, Long Outyan, am convinced too. Jiang Pingji, could the style of the streaming room be unified? At least not at such a serious moment. It almost made her laugh. Jiang Pingji coughed and calmed herself down. This Meng Liang likes to mingle with people from all walks of life. I don't know where he learned an excellent disguise technique. Because he looks feminine and looks like a woman, he looks like a pretty girl after dressing up a little. Even his closest relatives might not be able to recognize him. Using this advantage, he is like a fish in water. He has tricked many ignorant girls into letting go of their worries and suffering losses. Perhaps it was because he was too gullible and easy to trick. He felt disinterested and had other ideas. It was boring to act alone. No matter how great one's achievements were, it would become a one-man show without an audience. Chapter 114. If one walked too much at night, it was only natural that they would run into ghosts. Meng Liang had been fooling around for too long, and there were times when he would give himself away. It was a pity that the Meng family, the local tyrant in Sangzhou, was so powerful that they completely suppressed the voices of the victims. In the end, they made a false accusation, causing the victims' families to break up and die. Seeing this, the victims could only grit their teeth and endure the humiliation. With his family protecting him, Meng Liang became even more unruly when he saw that he had only been scolded a little. Eventually, he got into big trouble. That day, the military officer brought his wife and daughter to the Meng residence to celebrate the old matriarch's birthday. When Meng Liang saw his wife and daughter's beauty, he was overcome with lust and wanted to imitate them. However, the military officer's wife was not an ordinary woman and saw through his disguise. Meng Liang held a grudge against him, so he used his father, Meng Zhan's name as an excuse to lure the captain out of the mansion. He took a few of his friends from all walks of life and took the opportunity to rape the captain's wife and daughter. The commandant's wife was still breathing, but her daughter had been raped to the point where she had lost her breath. In the end, she also went crazy and killed herself. Both mother and daughter died tragically. By the time the county commandant finished his work and returned home, it was already 3 days later. Only then did he find out that his wife and daughter had died. The Meng family concealed the cause of death and disposed of the body. Meng Liang was also restrained for a period of time. When the limelight died down, he would return to his old ways. Coincidentally, what Meng Liang had done was found out by the county commandant. Then, the county commandant set fire to the prefectural governor's manor. But how could the military strength of the county commandant compare with that of the Meng family? The commandant was quickly defeated and fled deep into the mountains, his whereabouts unknown. However, this matter was far from over. Although the incident with Meng Liang was the cause, the fact that the Meng family bullied the common people and exploited the merchants is true. It caused a lot of resentment among the people. Even though the county commandant was nowhere to be found, the civil unrest in Meng County was far from over. Meng Liang was escorted out of Tsang Prefecture's Meng County by the elders of his family. He planned to go to Shangjing to lie low. His friends from all walks of life were also afraid that the Mengs would blame them for leading Meng Liang astray, so they followed Meng Liang and left Meng County in Tsang Prefecture. Feng Jin was dumbfounded. Such an absurd thing, he thought he knew enough, but he didn't expect Meng Liang's actions to change his bottom line. No matter what, the Meng family is still the descendant of a good and loyal family. Even if they are not as strict as Duke Meng's era, they should not have raised such a maggot-like beast. The Meng family has gone too far. Wei Yuan rarely scolded people, but it was clear that he was furious. Thinking of his daughter, he almost spat out a mouthful of blood. That Meng Liang is a bastard, but he also loves his life. He's very cunning. In order to prevent one person from being exposed and implicating him, these people have very little contact with each other. No one knows where everyone is hiding. Therefore, even if they managed to catch one or two of them, they would not be able to catch everyone in one fell swoop. Jiang Pingji suddenly smiled. However, there is also an advantage. Wei Yuan looked at her in confusion. Things had already turned out this way. What could be good about it? On the other hand, Chiguan Rang seemed to have thought of something. A cold glint flashed across his gloomy eyes. It is indeed very good. The deeper they hid, the better. If they lost their lives without anyone knowing, the Meng family would not be able to pursue the matter. Hejin County was not Meng County, where the Meng family could control everything. It was surrounded by dense forests and mountains. It was common for a person to be eaten by a wild beast. Feng Jin understood what they meant, but he only opened his mouth and swallowed the words he wanted to say back into his stomach. Jiang Pingji only needed to achieve her goal. I have troubled you tonight. Tomorrow, I will come to your manor with gifts to apologize. I hope you can forgive my reckless behavior. Jiang Pingji looked through Lu Lanting's memories as she apologized to Wei Yuan. It was also a tactful gesture that Jiang Pingji did not want to disturb him anymore. She only needed to go home and sleep. As Jiang Pingji searched through Lu Lanting's memories, she bowed and apologized to Wei Yuan. It was getting dark, so she did not want to disturb him any longer. She wanted to go home and sleep, and she hoped that Wei Yuan would allow it. On the surface, Jiang Pingji seemed to be apologizing respectfully, but her eyes were calm. She had no intention of apologizing at all, which made Wei Yuan feel even more depressed. However, the information that had happened that night was too much for him to handle. He was a middle-aged man, and he was not as energetic as he used to be. Why would I blame you? You're doing this out of good intentions. Wei Yuan let Jiang Pingji off the hook easily, but the viewers in the streaming room were not. Now, no way. Is Master Wei Yuan just going to let it go? He doesn't seem to have any intention of taking it further. What the hell is going on? Hongjun Laozu de Jua, I'm not happy. Wei Yuan is the host's teacher. I thought he was a man of indomitable spirit, but it turns out to be disappointing. He doesn't deserve to be the host's teacher. His concubine is being bullied. Ai de Ling Ling, I'm disappointed too. He's not even as brave as the captain who set fire to the manor. He should at least say something. Zexia Yi Liangqin, men don't have balls. If it were me, I would beat the sh*t out of Meng Liang's head. Zexia Long Outyin, sh*t out of his head. Ha ha ha, brother Liangqin, I, Long Outyin, admire you in this streaming room. Jiang Pingji looked at the bullet screen calmly. She thought for a while and then sent a message. Host V, although I don't like Wei Yuan's reaction, I'm sorry to tell you that his reaction is very manly. It's not that he doesn't have a decision, but it's not convenient for him to say it in front of us. Jiang Pingji's words were like dripping water from boiling oil. It instantly caused an uproar. Aoxinqiang, host, I'm not educated. Don't mess with me. How can he be considered a man? Jiang Pingji looked out the window, speechless. According to Lu Lanting's memory, Wei Yuan's anger was mostly because his daughter was frightened and his reputation was tarnished. It was not because his concubine had cheated on him. Why? It was because that person was cunning and seduced Wei Yuan's cheap concubine. Cheap concubine, noble concubine, legal wife. These three terms had different meanings for Dongqing men. The legal wife was the wife, the noble concubine was the concubine with some status, and the cheap concubine was a commodity that was only bought for fun. Take a chestnut for example. If Wei Yuan's best friend came to visit and Wei Yuan asked him to stay the night, it was possible that the cheap concubine would serve him. Not to mention this, in some places where the atmosphere was more absurd, the male master would even let the pregnant cheap concubines serve the guests, or both parties would exchange cheap concubines for fun. The position of the cheap concubine in their hearts was nothing more than an object that could move. Even a clay figurine would get angry if someone touched their property without the owner's permission, but it would never reach the point where they would fight to the death. If Meng Liang had touched the county captain's concubine instead of his wife, the county captain would have been angry, but he would have tolerated it out of loyalty. _3, angle, _ under such circumstances, what weight could the cheap concubine have in Wei Yuan's heart? Wei Yuan's original intention for revenge was to seek justice for his daughter, not for the concubine. Chapter 115. We provide you with exciting novels to read. Jiang Pingji and Feng Jin had climbed over the wall, but they left openly. Wei Yuan even prepared a carriage for them. The carriage's shock absorption was not as good as the one in the Liu's, so the bumps along the way were unbearable. Feng Jin sighed. I didn't expect a gentleman like Meng Heng to have such a filthy younger brother. Why do you care if he's a gentleman or not when you're making friends? Jiang Pingji curled her lips and her eyes shone coldly. I just feel bad for Meng Heng. Feng Jin was sensitive to other people's emotions. He knew Jiang Pingji was upset, so he explained, Lanting, I'm afraid you don't know that even though Meng Heng is the legitimate son of the Mengs, his parents don't care about him. I've been his classmate for a few years. If I didn't know he was the eldest son, I would have thought he was from a branch of the Mengs. Jiang Pingji tilted her head to look at Feng Jin. He continued, there's an assessment every 3 years. Meng Heng's family background, knowledge, personality, appearance, and ability aren't bad. However, his younger brother's behavior will have a huge impact on his moral evaluation. Dongqing's selection system was similar to the 9-rank system, but there was a big difference between the two. Family background, knowledge, personality, appearance, ability, and moral were the 6 main categories. When Dongqing was founded, knowledge, ability, and moral behavior were the top 3 categories. Family background, personality, and appearance were the bottom 3. The evaluation score was 60% of the top 3 categories, 30% of the bottom 3 categories, and 10% of the evaluation officer. The standards were not implemented for long. With the intervention of the aristocratic families, the top 3 categories became family background, moral behavior, and knowledge, and the bottom 3 became appearance, ability, and personality. The proportion of the top 3 categories increased, and the evaluation authority was strengthened. Moral behavior belonged to the top 3 categories. Because of Meng Heng, even if Meng Heng could get an excellent grade, he would become an inferior one. Feng Jin's previous reaction was not only because he couldn't believe there was such a filthy person in the world, but also because he felt sorry for his classmate. 90% of the people who could enter the general assessment were descendants of aristocratic families. The gap between them was small. Moral behavior went from excellent to inferior. How big of an impact would it have? It was enough to make Meng Heng, who was originally expected to be in the top 3, fall into the middle of the pack and fade into the crowd. What a pity, who asked him to have such a dragging brother? In this day and age, it was not popular to be responsible for one's actions alone. Meng Liang's moral integrity was questionable, which meant that the men of the Meng family were also morally questionable. The closer one was to Meng Liang, the easier it was to be implicated. It was only natural that Meng Heng would be in trouble. Why are you so worried about him? After all, he's the legitimate son of the Meng family. If the Meng family doesn't fall, he can make a comeback at any time. It's just an evaluation. What can it prove? Jiang Pingji rolled her eyes and scoffed at Feng Jin's worries. If Yu has time to think about this, why don't you help me think about how to fool my father later? You didn't even bid farewell to me when you left the spring pavilion. What he said made so much sense that he couldn't refute a single word. The evaluation results could only affect one's initial official position, but it could not affect one's future career. No matter how much Meng Heng was not loved by his parents, he was still the eldest son of the Meng family. If he wanted to inherit the family in the future, he would have the support of the Meng family. Jiang Pingji secretly glanced at Feng Jin's expression and couldn't stop laughing in her heart. How could Dongqing not be chaotic when all the aristocratic families were messing with the court? Meng County in Song Prefecture was just a small flame. Although it was small and weak, who could say that it did not have the potential to set the prairie ablaze? Lu County Chief is not an ordinary person. How can we hide from him? Feng Jin shook his head and tried to persuade Jiang Pingji to accept her fate. Jiang Pingji snorted. Since Yu said so, I have an idea. I just need to tell my father that there was a prostitute selling herself in the nearby pavilion and urged me to join in the fun. I left in a hurry and was afraid of being scolded by my father, so I didn't report it. Feng Jin's friends were dumbfounded. Was this the rhythm of throwing all the dirty water at him? Could they still be friends? Lanting. Feng Jin's cheeks were red with anger. He had never seen such a rascal. I was just joking. Yu, do you really think I would do that? Jiang Pingji made a disappointed and sad expression. Together with the gesture of holding his heart, Feng Jin was angry, but he felt even more aggrieved when he was not angry. He had made a bad friend by mistake. Outsiders say that Lu Shi's son is unrestrained and unrestrained. What they say makes sense, Yi Futian said. It's a waste to be frivolous when you are young. If you don't be frivolous, you won't be able to be so when you are old. Jiang Pingji didn't seem to hear the ridicule in Feng Jin's words. Instead, she lectured him shamelessly. I'm not criticizing you, but you look like you have seen through the world at such a young age. You talk and act like an old scholar. Your steps are more delicate than a girl's, and your voice is gentle, he had rowed his boat all his life without oars. The corner of Feng Jin's mouth twitched. Not to be outdone, he retorted, if that girl is you, I'm indeed too delicate. Jiang Pingji was speechless. The audience in the streaming room held their melon seeds in their hands and watched the two pretty boys bicker. They all expressed that they had been forced to eat candy. Lanky Yubuja, ha ha ha, the young Feng Jin has been bullied by the streamer for so long. He finally stood up for himself. Jinyan, you're stupid, what are you talking about? The streamer is obviously looking at the young Feng Jin's counterattack with a doting expression. Zexia Yi Liangchen, I'm on the streamer's side. The CP can be broken but not reversed. The streamer will always be the aggressor. Zexia Long Outyin, absolutely. All the little subs who try to counterattack are paper tigers. Liu Siji Lianming, the streamer's childhood sweetheart, is the aggressor. The CP matches with the streamer's doting smile. It's even more delicious. I see your chrysanthemum is poisonous, heresy. The streamer's CP is me. She is a cute baby. 9 times in one night, */w***, faced with such a toxic audience, even Jiang Pingji could only be speechless. To be honest, it was the first time Feng Jin had mentioned Jiang Pingji's gender. Huayu, there's something I don't understand. You know I'm a girl. Why are you still friends with me? Feng Jin glanced at her and said bluntly, apart from your body, which part of you looks like a girl? She couldn't blame him for always ignoring her gender and treating her as a man. Friends were friends. Gender didn't matter. It only mattered if their temperament was compatible. Jiang Pingji looked at the screen full of ha 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 and raised her eyebrows. Vulgar words. Feng Jin said, it varies from person to person. Jiang Pingji, did this kid take the wrong medicine? Was he asking for a beating? Fortunately, Jiang Pingji was a person with a strong mentality. Feng Jin's skills couldn't affect her much. Chapter 116. Speaking of which, your temperament is similar to my younger brother's. Feng Jin raised his hand and lifted the curtain of the carriage slightly. He looked at the night sky outside and suddenly thought of something. His face was warm, both are so mischievous and love to tease people. Jiang Pingji replied in disbelief, teasing. I thought that your Feng family was strict and everyone was like you. Feng Jin said strangely, Lanting, didn't you say that the 9 sons of the dragon are different? Although my youngest brother and I share the same mother, our temperaments are different. He is young and intelligent, and has been doted on by his elders since he was young. Although his personality is a bit naughty, as long as he doesn't cross the line, it's fine. The direct line of descent of the Feng family had elder brother Feng Jin at the front. At the very least, there was still Feng Jin. There was no need to trouble the youngest son of the family, so he had to bear the least amount of pressure. The elders favored the eldest son, but favored and doted on the youngest son. This was a common practice in almost every family. The pitiful Feng Jin was in the middle. Although he wasn't completely ignored, he was indeed neglected compared to his eldest brother and youngest brother. Jiang Pingji glanced at Feng Jin, whose face softened at the mention of his younger brother. I really couldn't tell that you, Huayu, are actually a brother complex as well. What is a younger brother complex? Feng Jin carefully pondered over this term and did not understand its meaning. Jiang Pingji explained, it refers to an elder brother who likes his younger brother very much. The relationship between brothers is very good. After Feng Jin heard this, he revealed a thoughtful expression and immediately drew inferences. This term is really novel. In that case, there are also terms like brother complex, sister complex, or sister complex. That's roughly what it means. It describes the deep relationship between siblings. Yes. Jiang Pingji nodded. You are worth teaching. Feng Jin couldn't help laughing. These words are clever and interesting. They are simple but catchy. Is it the local dialect of Heijin? Jiang Pingji said with a natural expression, I heard it from a traveling merchant. I don't know where it came from. The young man pondered for a while and said with a smile, so, I can be considered a brother complex. Jiang Pingji chuckled. I know you three brothers have a good relationship. Next. Rumors stop with the wise, and chats stop with laughter. However, Feng Jin did not understand the joke. He changed the topic and talked about other things with Jiang Pingji. Lanting, have you talked to County Chief Liu about going to Langya? Jiang Pingji was not a person who liked to stay in one place without moving. Heijin County was not small, but it was not big either. I did. Father is very supportive of me going to Langyi to study, but he said that I don't need to reveal my mother's name. Jiang Pingji rested her elbows on the table and supported her chin with her right hand. Her body was tilted. Her bold and unrestrained sitting posture was an eyesore to Feng Jin. At first, he didn't understand, but after thinking about it, he vaguely understood the intention of Lu Shi's decision. Master Yuanjing was a real famous teacher. Although he would take care of Lu Lanting for the sake of the ancients, his initial impression of Lu Lanting was not as good as his teacher. It was not as if Lu Lanting was incapable. If she could impress Master Yuanjing with her own knowledge and talent, it would be better and more dignified than relying on her deceased mother to become Master Yuanjing's disciple. Feng Jin asked, when do you plan to leave? Jiang Pingji had never thought about it, or rather, she did not really want to study in Langyi County. About 2 or 3 months. Father has been in Hu County for many years and has rarely returned home. It's rare for him to stay home for 3 months. It would be a pity if I left to study now. I want to spend more time with him to fulfill my filial duties. Moreover, I need Master Gongsao's permission. Jiang Pingji's words were half true and half false. Jiang Pingji only said it to give Feng Jin an explanation. When parents are around, one should not travel far. Children should be filial to their parents. Lanting's way of thinking is the right thing to do. Feng Jin could not help but think of himself. If it were not for the fact that his parents were healthy and his siblings were still around, he would not have left home. If Lanting goes to Langyi in 3 months, I'm afraid you and I will have to be separated for some time. Jiang Pingji turned to him and asked, are you leaving Heijin County? Feng Jin nodded and added, but we won't be leaving in the next 2 days. As for when we leave, that will depend on 4th Lang Jun. Even though Wuma Jun was not valued by the emperor, he was still a prince. Feng Jin still had to respect his decision. Jiang Pingji raised her eyebrows and sneered. If that's the case, you won't be able to leave Heijin County for a while. It was easier to talk to smart people. Feng Jin understood the meaning behind Jiang Pingji's words. Wuma Jun was obviously trying to win Lu Shi over to his side. He hoped that Lu Shi would support him and become a powerful bargaining chip in his fight for the position of crown prince. Hu County had become a popular place in Dongxing under Lu Shi's years of hard work. Its grain production could alleviate the food shortage in the neighboring 2 counties. In ancient times, the 2 most important bargaining chips in a war were people and grain. With grain in hand, there was nothing to worry about. If there was rice, there would naturally be manpower. To put it bluntly, if Wuma Jun really managed to get Lu Shi's full support, Wuma Jun could also recruit troops to besiege Shangjing when the emperor chose another prince. He could then drag his brother off the throne. It was a tradition in the royal family of Dongxing for brothers to fight against each other. Of course, no one knew if Wuma Jun had such ambition at the moment. But if he succeeded in winning over Lu Shi, it would be a profitable business. Since ancient times, it had been difficult to move talented people, let alone Wuma Jun, who was just an unknown prince. Lu Shi, on the other hand, was already a famous high-ranking official with real power. It was impossible to get someone with potential to work for you without putting in some effort. Therefore, Jiang Pingji concluded that Feng Jin would stay in Hejin County for a long time. Feng Jin knew what was going on. He smiled bitterly and said, "Since you already know, don't expose me." It was fine as long as the two of them knew each other well. It would be embarrassing if they were to expose each other. Jiang Pingji's thoughts lingered on Wuma Jun. She suddenly remembered something. "Huayu, I remember you saying that you're not engaged yet." Feng Jin nodded and laughed. He guessed, "Why do you ask? Don't tell me you want to be a matchmaker." If it was someone from ancient times, he or she would not have said that. But Jiang Pingji did not have that concern. She looked at Feng Jin and said, "I do have that thought. Huayu is a good candidate for a husband. We should keep the goodies to ourselves." The smile on Feng Jin's face froze for a moment, and then he revealed an embarrassed expression. Chapter 117. Jiang Pingji nodded and acknowledged his guess. Father said that Madame Wei seems to have taken a liking to Wuma Jun. She wants to marry Jing heir to him. It's not that I'm bad-mouthing people behind their backs, but Wuma Jun really isn't a good candidate. If Jing heir really marries him, she'll suffer in the future. How can I bear to see that happen? Jiang Pingji was very patient with the cute girl. Most of the time, she cherished her. Wei Jingxian rarely interacted with Jiang Pingji, but to the original Lu Lanting, Wei Jingxian was like a sister. She was very important. Feng Jin was speechless. Even though he did not think highly of Wuma Jun's character, his evaluation of him was not as low as Jiang Pingji's. "I don't know how Masanori offended you, but you seem to hold a grudge against him. Don't you also dislike him?" Jiang Pingji rolled her eyes. "I treat Jing like a sister. Put yourself in her shoes and think about it. If it were you, would you be willing to hand your sister over to that kind of person? It's true that I don't really like him, but other than a few people, even Jingzi himself didn't realize it. Lanting, you have good taste. To be honest, if it were me, I would be worried as well. It's just that if you entrust it to me, would you be at ease? Although I don't really care about the young talents of the younger generation in Dongqing, I can guess that you must be the ideal son-in-law in many people's eyes. I can't be wrong." Jiang Pingji said seriously. "Actually, this is just my own wishful thinking. Just as you said, the marriage of children is decided by their parents. It seems useless to talk about this here." The scenery smiled without saying a word. From his point of view, Jiang Pingji mentioning this matter was a little strange, but it was also human nature. Previously, many classmates wanted to introduce their sisters to him, but he rejected them all. Without a foothold, how could he marry and start a family? Lu Lanting treated Wei Jingxian like a family member, so it was understandable that she was anxious about her marriage. The only awkward part was, Wei Jingxian was someone else's daughter, and her parents were still alive. Feng Jin silently turned his head, but a brief image of Wei Jingxian appeared in his mind. She was indeed a quick-witted woman. However, when it came to quick-wittedness, none of the women he had met could compare to the one beside him. Unfortunately, according to County Chief Lu, he had no intention of restoring his identity. If he were to recover, that wouldn't do either. If it were to be made public, Lu Shi's reputation would be completely ruined. Feng Jin comforted her, "Everyone has their own fate. You don't have to worry too much." "I hope so." Jiang Pingji snorted at those words. In ancient times, there were too few reliable men, but she could not expect women to rely on themselves. It was unrealistic. To put it bluntly, she hated every aspect of this era, and women were the most inferior. While they were talking, the carriage had already stopped in front of the spring pavilion. Yes, they did not go to the Lu residence, nor did they go to the place where Feng Jin was staying. Instead, they went to the spring pavilion. It was already late at night, but the street was still brightly lit. The shadows of the people in the street looked especially fleeting under the candlelight. Jiang Pingji went straight to the private room. Lu Shi was sitting by the table with a delicate book in his hand. He was reading the book carefully with his eyes slightly lowered. The performers in the corner of the room were still singing in Wu Nong's soft voice. Wuma Jun sat beside him with a happy expression. It was obvious that the atmosphere between them was harmonious. There was hope for them to be friends. "You're back." Lu Shi put away the book and looked up at Jiang Pingji. "Did you have a good time?" "Not bad." Wuma Jun almost couldn't keep the smile on his face when he heard the suspicious conversation between the father and son. Not only did the father not blame his son for coming to the brothel to have fun, but he also looked gentle and concerned. It was rare to see that in life. It seemed that the rumor that Lu Shi valued his son was not without reason. Wuma Jun could not help but think that Jiang Pingji was more important to him. What Feng Jin was worried about did not happen. Otherwise, he had reason to believe that his bad friend would make him the scapegoat. If that's the case, let's go back. Lu Shi stood up and glanced at Jiang Pingji and Feng Jin. He furrowed his brows and kept a cold face. "If you want to come over to listen to music in the future, remember to inform your mother first." Jiang Pingji nodded. Feng Jin was suspicious. He did not know if it was an illusion. Why did he feel that Lu Shi's attitude toward him was getting colder? Wuma Jun wanted to ask Lu Shi to stay, but they were in the spring pavilion, which was not a decent place. It would be ridiculous if he did that. No matter how reluctant he was, he could only watch Lu Shi leave with his son and get into the carriage. Huayu and Lu Yu's son are really close. We hit it off at first sight. Feng Jin said with a smile, "It's getting late. I'll go back first." "Do you still want to stay here?" Wuma Jun shook his head. He had come to have fun and relax, but he had wanted to win Lu Shi over. Now that Lu Shi was gone, he was not in the mood to play. He might as well go back. "No, I'll go back with Huayu." In the carriage, Lu Shi was reading the book carefully. Jiang Pingji could feel that he was faking his impatience. "Father, ask whatever you want. You don't have to hold it in." Jiang Pingji took out some dried fruits from a hidden box in the carriage and threw some into her mouth. "Since I came back, you've had doubts about me." Lu Shi did not bother to keep up the pretense. He looked conflicted. His eyes fell on a certain part of Jiang Pingji's clothes. "Are you interested in Feng Huayu?" Jiang Pingji said, "No." "Why would you ask that?" Anyone could see that Feng Jin saw her as a good friend, and she saw Feng Jin as a good friend and bestie. "But both of you." Lu Shi's expression became even more conflicted. If the daughter was the son and Feng Jin was the woman, as her father, he could at least ask in a subtle way if the two of them had done anything improper when they went out just now. But the problem was that the person in front of him was his daughter. He could not ask that question no matter how thick-skinned he was. Lu Shi could not ask, but Jiang Pingji was not simple. She followed Lu Shi's gaze and looked at her clothes. The corners of her clothes were stained with dust. "Oh. So that's what happened." She understood immediately. "I didn't press Feng Jin against the wall." "Father, you're thinking too much." Jiang Pingji explained with a serious face. Lu Shi was speechless. Chapter 118. We provide you with wonderful novels to read. Lu Shi's lips quivered. He suddenly felt helpless about his daughter's explanation. He realized something horrifying. He subconsciously felt that his daughter had done something bad to Feng Jin, not that Feng Jin had taken advantage of her. Perhaps, compared to his daughter's clean clothes, the dust stains on Feng Jin's clothes were more obvious. He looked like the one who had been raped and bullied. Your explanation will only make me more worried, Lu Shi said helplessly. Why didn't he just say that there was nothing wrong? Why did he have to add another sentence? It's best if there's nothing wrong. You're still young. That kind of thing is not urgent. Of course, if there's really something wrong, don't panic. Jiang Pingji was speechless. Zaixia Yeliankin, my father-in-law is amazing. He's so open-minded. Is he really a native man from ancient times? Yubi Basin Sangwashan, the host's father, is a good man of the century who was taught by the time-traveling mama. He's a national Prince Charming here, but I think he's a bit too open-minded _ smiley face 3 angle _. Now, I think it's normal for the host's father to have such a reaction. He's educated the host as a man through and through. He's already gotten rid of the grudge that she's a woman. Since he's a son, why would he care about those things? Kaitang Dafan Auntie, I agree with the comment above. If the host's father still holds the host to the standards of an ancient woman, it means that he hasn't crossed the threshold in his heart. He doesn't treat the host as a real son. He still thinks of the host as a daughter and subconsciously measures the host with the standards of a woman. This is biased and disgusting. Nongfu Shangquan Yudiangshuan, with this explanation, I suddenly feel that the host's father has a very high level of thinking. At least if it was me, even if I raised my daughter as a son, would still think of her as a daughter. No matter what, it's impossible for her to be like a boy. In fact, the audience in the live streaming room had overly glorified Lu Shi. Lu Shi's thinking had not reached that level yet. The reason why he was so open-minded was because, from the beginning to the end, he had viewed his daughter as the future Empress. She was the most supreme person in the world, and no one was qualified to be above her. Using the standards of women in the secular world to measure an emperor felt like scribbling on a magnificent painting and forcefully tarnishing a painting that was supposed to be passed down through the ages. It was as disgusting as eating an apple and discovering maggots in the latrine pit. Feng Jin and I went to Mr. Wei's mansion and climbed over the wall. These stains on my clothes were probably from that time. Jiang Pingji didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She tried to explain so that Lu Shi wouldn't go overboard. Did she look like someone who didn't have a bottom line and wasn't serious? Although she didn't look serious, she wasn't a fickle person. In fact, her pursuit of spirituality was higher than that of ordinary people, and her standards were also stricter. She would rather have nothing than be substandard. No matter what, it was impossible for Feng Jin to be alright. Lu Shi was just about to relax when his heart skipped a beat. He asked in shock, climb Wei Gongcao's wall. In the middle of the night, his daughter was climbing the walls of Wei Yuan's house with her friends. How could he do that? That's right. Didn't I leave with the two ladies just now? I happened to meet a suspicious woman who dressed up as a woman and snuck into Enchanting's house with bad intentions, so I exposed her. I didn't expect that it would turn out to be a big deal. What big deal? Lu Shi furrowed his brows. He and Wei Yuan knew each other and were friends. He knew Wei Yuan very well. If there was no inside story, then based on Wei Yuan's personality, he would definitely not let the matter rest that his daughter had climbed over his wall. The man dressed up as a woman was from Tsang Prefecture's Mang County. They snuck into someone else's house with bad intentions. The man I caught at Enchanting's house pointed to Mr. Wei's house. I was afraid that something would happen, so I went to arrest him. Lu Shi's expression softened. His daughter was doing it for the good of Wei Yuan's house. No matter how unhappy the old man was, he wouldn't target her. Instead, he would owe her a favor. And then? Did you catch him? So he went to Wei Yuan's house. No wonder it took him so long. It was far from Yingchen house. We've caught him, but he's brought us even more trouble. Jiang Pingji skipped over the unfortunate incident at Wei Yuan's house. It was a private matter, so she didn't want to waste her breath. According to the information, the leader of the group was from the Mangs in Song Prefecture's Mang County. Lu Shi's eyes flashed when he heard the name Mangs. The Mangs in Song Prefecture's Mang County. Yes. I heard it was caused by a man named Meng Liang. When he was in Meng County, he was lawless. He even brought people to humiliate the wife and daughter of the Meng's family, the county chief of Meng County. He forced them to become bandits. Not only did they rebel against their old master, he even burned down the county chief's mansion. Meng Liang was secretly sent away from Meng County by his family. Those people from all walks of life were also afraid of death, so they secretly followed Meng Liang, and now they came to Hejin County to create trouble. One by one, the snacks in his hand were finished. Lu Shi was dumbfounded the whole time. Such a big thing happened in Song Prefecture's Meng County. It was Jiang Pingji's turn to be dumbfounded. Father, you don't know. Lu Shi shook his head. Never heard of it. Although he had never heard of it, he felt that what Jiang Pingji said was true. Hu County, where he was appointed, was very far from Tsang Prefecture. The means of communication in ancient times were very backward, so the transmission of information was slow and inaccurate. He had been cooped up at home from Hu County for the past few days, so it was normal that he did not know about the news. It's okay. I'll send someone to ask about it when I get back. Lu Shi closed his eyes and tapped his right hand on his knee rhythmically. His expression was slightly stiff, as if he was enduring something. Jiang Pingji frowned when she saw his reaction. Something was wrong with his reaction. Before she could continue her analysis, Lu Shi suddenly said, "Lanting, you have to learn one thing, see through it, but don't say it." Jiang Pingji averted her gaze and shifted her attention to other things, such as the audience voting. Although the interactive live stream was a little off-topic, Jiang Pingji had strolled around Yingchen House and listened to some tunes, which was in line with the theme. Not to mention that she had given the audience another good show, so the live stream was worth it. "System, it's time to settle the score," Jiang Pingji said to the system in her mind. "Let them vote after the settlement." The system was already a dead fish, but it was no match for Jiang Pingji in terms of patience. Chapter 119. A genius in a second to remember if you like it. System, streamer Jiang Pingji's first full interactive streaming has ended perfectly. Dear viewers, are you satisfied? A. Satisfied, B. Average, C. Not satisfied. Before the viewers could click, Jiang Pingji quickly added another sentence, which made the system feel embarrassed and treacherous at the same time. Streamer V. The rating of your streaming experience will affect the level of the streaming room. From level 1 to level 2, the upper limit of 3,000 viewers will increase to 10,000. The higher the rating, the more beneficial it will be for the streaming room to level up. This stream is just a test. If the results are good, additional streams will be held from time to time in the future to satisfy the viewer's curiosity and experience. In other words, if you want to continue watching interesting streams and don't want to wait in line for a spot every day, the faster her streaming room can level up, the better your streaming experience will be. If you give a bad review on purpose, she will always remember it. Because of her words, a few naughty viewers who wanted to give a bad review stopped and gave a good review. System, host, where is your face? It fell on the ground. Do you want me to pick it up for you? Jiang Pingji sneered and retorted, I'm just using all available resources. It's not against the rules. As for the face on the ground, you can pick it up and paste it on yourself. One of us is shameless and the other is thick-skinned. What a good match. What's the point of having a face? The system heard the threat and anger in Jiang Pingji's words. It sent out a string of words angrily. Sob, you're bullying me again. You weren't like this before. You don't love me anymore. Jiang Pingji smiled wickedly. I just like watching you watch me act shamelessly, but I can't do anything about it. System, why did it hate her so much? The votes from 3,000 viewers ended quickly. The system was even faster. The results came out in a few breaths. Of the 3,000 votes, 2,973 were satisfied, 26 were average, and 1 was not satisfied. Jiang Pingji didn't care about the negative review vote. She knew who voted it without looking. By Julie, QWQ streamer, I repent. Although I know that the content of your live broadcast is very exciting, and I watch it with relish, I was really scared before. Don't be mad at me for giving you a SOSO evaluation. Black Rose, I'm shocked too, but I think the live stream is just a so-so. It's already a lot of face to give them an average rating. Take it or leave it. Then, a few people sent similar messages. It didn't seem like they were apologizing, but more like they were doing it on purpose to disgust her. Jiang Pingji's expression was the same as usual. Her heart was unmoved, or, she did not care about the content at all. She did not even care about the system. How could she care about the comments of the audience who were separated by a virtual screen and a different dimension? Wouldn't that be making things difficult for him? He quickly glanced at the screen, but on the surface, it looked like his eyes were half closed, as if he was taking a nap. No one could tell what was going on. The system said, although it was your first show, and you used shameless methods, the final result is still very gratifying. 3,000 votes, 2,973 satisfied. In other words, the satisfaction rate was as high as a terrifying 1%. According to the system's contract, if the satisfaction rate was 95% or above, he or she would receive a gold chest. If the satisfaction rate was 80% or above, but below 95%, he or she would receive a silver chest. If the satisfaction rate was 60% or above, but below 80%, he or she would receive a bronze chest. If the satisfaction rate was less than 60%, there would be no additional reward. Jiang Pingji's satisfaction rate was as high as 1%. Without a doubt, she would receive the highest level of gold chest. When the results came out, Jiang Pingji was slightly satisfied with the number. Host V, it's too late today. The live broadcast will end here. Good night, everyone. After that, the virtual screen suddenly turned black. The streamer's status changed from in live broadcast to running on live broadcast. She heard an electronic beep, and the system notified her that she had received a reward envelope with a gold chest inside. The system said excitedly, "Host, do you want to open the chest now?" Jiang Pingji secretly raised her eyebrows and said to the system, "Of course I want to open it, but not now. I'll open it tomorrow." The system was originally waiting for her to show off her luck and open a level-up card in one go. When the streaming room was upgraded to level 2, the system, as a system, would also receive some benefits. But Jiang Pingji was not anxious at all. How annoying. The emperor is not anxious, but the eunuch is. It's okay to wait for one night. Jiang Pingji did not know what the system was thinking, but it was as if she could see its anxious expression. She said leisurely, it's not the right time. No matter how anxious you are, it's useless. The system snorted and retorted, "Host, who are you calling a eunuch?" Although it was just a system, it also had human rights. It could not be so easily trampled on. The carriage drove all the way to the Lu mansion. After Jiang Pingji bowed to Lu Shi, she went straight to her small courtyard. In another hour, the sky would be bright, but lanterns were still hung in the small courtyard. The whole small courtyard was brightly lit. The courtyard door was not locked yet. Jiang Pingji entered the courtyard and saw the two maids, Takshu and Xuanmei, leaning against the pillars. They could not hide the tiredness on their faces. They had a plain warm cloak draped over their shoulders and their heads were nodding. They could fall asleep at any time. Jiang Pingji did not have to guess to know how long they had been waiting outside. Seeing Jiang Pingji return, Takshu and Xuanmei stood up and went forward to put the warm cloak on her. Naturally, they could smell the strong scent of makeup on her. "Lang Jun, which fox den did you come from?" Takshu, who had a bad temper, could not help but complain after entering the warm room. Xuanmei secretly stared at Takshu, indicating that she should be more obedient and not cross the line. Otherwise, based on what she said just now, she could be accused of not respecting her superiors. A light punishment would be a meal, and a heavy punishment would cost her a month's worth of silver and she would lose her position as the head maid. Jiang Pingji answered smoothly, "Of course, I came from a nest of beautiful fox sisters." Takshu was speechless and could not continue. In terms of eloquence and shamelessness, the two were not at the same level. How could they compare? "If Takshu is curious about the fox den, I will bring you there to see the world the next time I go out." Takshu glanced at Jiang Pingji. "Lang Jun, you always make fun of me. Why would a good girl go to such a shady place?" Isn't it because of the Meng's profound background that gives him the confidence to commit crimes? On a smaller scale, it's just a dishonorable son of a noble family provoking the people. But on a larger scale, he's courting death. Usually, the Mengs would have found a way to suppress the matter of Meng Liang and turn it into a small matter. But now, this matter was like a small flame that seemed to be going out at any time. But it could cause a series of chain reactions and eventually lead to a big fire. Unfortunately, she was now in Hejin County and did not know much about the situation in Sangzhou, so she could not make further judgments. After looking at the great universal geographic map of Dongqing for a long time, Jiang Pingji put away her things. The sky outside was completely bright. Takshu and Xuanmei led the other maids to deliver a set of toiletries on the dot. Jiang Pingji splashed her face with warm water to clear her head. "Lang Jun, do you have any plans today? Father won't be able to get up for the time being. Ask the housekeeper to prepare the carriage. I'll go to Shangfu Temple first. I'll be back around noon. If father asks, tell him that I went to Shangfu Temple to visit Master Liaochen. Father will understand. If anyone from the farm comes to pass on a message, remember to write it down and I'll deal with it when I'm back." Jiang Pingji spoke quickly like a machine gun. The system was still thinking about the gold chest. Why did the host go to Shangfu Temple to look for that old monk? Jiang Pingji smiled mysteriously and did not give a precise answer. But the system soon knew her purpose. She climbed up thousands of steps to Shangfu Temple. Unsurprisingly, Jiang Pingji found a monk waiting for her outside the temple. Although the old monk was a bit strange, he had some abilities that were not known to outsiders. Jiang Pingji thought that the monk must have known she was coming when she was still at the foot of the mountain. Didn't he say that her murderous aura caused the Buddha's aura in the temple to move? Liaochen was still in the meditation room. Jiang Pingji walked up to him and sat on the cushion opposite him. "I wonder what brings you here today, young benefactor?" Master Liaochen chanted the name of Buddha and twirled the prayer beads in one hand. Master, you knew about the Ziwei Emperor's aura just by looking at my face. What else can you see today? Did she come to provoke me behind Master Lu's back? Liaochen carefully looked at Jiang Pingji's face. Other than the fact that the Emperor's aura was thicker and more solid than before, there seemed to be no other changes. Jiang Pingji saw that he did not understand her meaning. Her fingers tapped on the table and she had to be more direct. How's my luck today? Master Liaochen, did she come all the way to see him just to ask such a useless question? The system, it seemed to understand its host's thoughts a little. Master Liaochen deliberated and said, looking at your face, your luck is naturally excellent. You are not affected by the evil aura, and your luck is high and vigorous. Evil creatures have brains too, okay? In actual fact, just based on the baleful aura around her that was so dense that it could not be dispersed, even if there were evil spirits, they would take the initiative to hide far away. Others were afraid of ghosts, but when it came to her, it was the worry of ghosts. Oh, thank you for your guidance, Master. Jiang Pingji clasped her hands together and made a gesture that was not very standard. Master Liaochen was dumbfounded. Even though he was a highly respected monk, he still had some doubts in his heart. What kind of scheme did this young benefactor in front of him have? In fact, it was as simple as the system guessed. Jiang Pingji only treated Master Liaochen as a human luck testing machine. Today's luck was good, and it was suitable to draw a gold chest. The system, damn idiot. Since she was already here, she asked all the questions she needed to ask to avoid leaving a knot in her heart. Master Liaochen, there is one thing I don't understand. Who else can see through the so-called Ziwei Emperor's aura like you? Jiang Pingji felt that this question had to be asked clearly, in case she did not know how she was attacked. You don't have to worry about this, young lady. Master Liaochen smiled and stroked his beard. Earlier, I told you that one wrong thought could cut off your chances of ascending to the highest position. This is not absolute. You are not the only one who possesses the Ziwei Emperor's aura. Chapter 121. Master Liaochen nodded. Young almsgiver has quite the spiritual root, that is indeed what he meant. Although that was what he said, the person in front of him had the densest Ziwei Emperor Qi that the old monk had ever seen in his life. When Jiang Pingji heard what he said, she felt much more at ease. On the other hand, this so-called Ziwei Imperial aura was practically useless. Whether it was strong or weak, it was the person who affected it, not the other way around. No matter how rich it was, it couldn't turn a drunkard into a wise ruler. No matter how faint it was, it couldn't turn a wise gentleman into a sneaky villain. The relationship between the Ziwei Imperial aura and a person should be that the latter determined the strength of the former, not the other way around. Young benefactor, are you worried that someone will see through this and harm you? Master Liaochen suddenly smiled. If that's the case, then young benefactor can rest assured. Anyone who has this kind of eyesight, if it's not someone who has an indifferent temperament, then it's someone who lives in seclusion. No matter what kind of people they were, they would not easily get involved in the changes of the world. The general trend of the world, after being united for a long time, must be separated, and after being separated for a long time, must be united. This was a process that had to be experienced, and it was not something that could be controlled by mere manpower. More importantly, to put it bluntly, there were less than 5 people in the 5 kingdoms who were at the same level as him. Dongqing alone had 6 states and 21 counties. The land area of the other 4 countries could only be larger. In addition to the vast territory of the foreign tribes, no one knew how vast this world was. How small was the probability of meeting a few people in such a vast territory? Even if he was a blind cat bumping into a dead mouse, he wouldn't run into 4 or 5 of them one after another, right? If it really happens, please forgive me. Descending the mountain was much faster than ascending it. Jiang Pingji's wooden clogs were so fast that they seemed to be flying. Soon, she arrived at the foot of the mountain where Shangfu Temple was located. Alright, you can draw a chest now. Jiang Pingji entered the carriage. The coachman skillfully raised the whip and drove the horse back. The system complained about its incompetence. I really don't want to admit that you're the host. I came all the way here just to see today's luck. No matter how the system ridiculed her, Jiang Pingji remained unmoved. She opened the system mailbox and opened the golden box inside the envelope. He pressed the confirm button in the air, and the box suddenly shattered. The pieces floated in the air and slowly solidified. When the golden shimmer dissipated, a golden card the size of a poker card appeared in front of her. The system, damn it, didn't they say that the drop rate of the level up card was extremely low? Jiang Pingji raised her hand and took the level up card. She had a faint smile on her lips. She was not surprised by the result of the lucky draw. See, what did I say? It's red enough, right? The system, which was already a useless fish, said weakly, let's toast tea to the lucky king. Jiang Pingji laughed involuntarily. She clamped the level-up card between her two fingers. She exerted a little force on her knuckles and an option appeared in front of her. Little Angel System kindly reminds you that the host is currently a level 1 streamer. After using the card, the host will be promoted to level 2. The number of viewers in the live broadcast room will increase to 10,000. Are you sure you want to use the level up card? A. Yes. B. No. Did she even have to think about it? Since it was a free card, it would be a waste if she didn't use it. Jiang Pingji did not say anything else and opened the option A. There was a crisp rustling sound in her mind. The edge of the virtual screen that was turned off exuded a light gold color, and then it went silent. System announcement: congratulations to the host, Jiang Pingji, for officially becoming a level 2 streamer. The upper limit of the live broadcast room has been expanded to 10,000 viewers. Clusters of fireworks exploded on the virtual screen, and the originally simple and plain live broadcast interface had some light-colored patterns, which looked much better than the previous clean state. Jiang Pingji glanced at the upper limit. It had indeed increased to 10,000 viewers. System, start the live broadcast. Jiang Pingji ordered, and the system immediately responded. The live broadcast had just started, and a group of viewers rushed into the live broadcast room. Daeyang Wanwu, I was scared to death. I thought the streamer wouldn't start the broadcast today. Why is it so late today? Fortunately, I had the foresight to queue up a long time in advance. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to squeeze in. Is this the streamer herself? Much better than the video. More importantly, the streamer has a high degree of recognition. The picture quality was absolutely high definition, and the host herself had a pure natural appearance. There were no special effects that focused on her face, no special effects that made it impossible to see her facial features, no flat and thick unibrow, no sharp chin that could stab a person to death, or a face with strange proportions. She was a clear stream in the world of live broadcasting. Mama doesn't have to worry about the baby's face blindness getting worse _ smiley face 3, angle, _ Yejutsan. I heard that the streamer went to the brothel yesterday. I was heartbroken. I didn't manage to squeeze in until the end. I could only go to the Baidu forum to watch the video. I enjoyed it for a long time, and the more I watched, the more I regretted not watching. Kolele Yael, why do I feel that the number of bullet screens today is much higher than before? You sick people, your hands are too fast. When the viewers enter the live broadcast room, they usually don't look at the number of viewers. However, the number of bullet screens on the screen is abnormal. Jojo81, wow. Did I see it wrong? Why are there 10,000 viewers? Jiang Pingji's live broadcast room was somewhat famous in that dimension. It spread in a small circle and attracted more attention. What do the viewers who are always chasing updates complain about the most? Of course, it was not easy to get a seat in the live broadcast room. There were only 3,000 viewers, and it was impossible to get a seat if the internet speed was slow. What about now? Were their eyes playing tricks on them? Host V, this live broadcast room has officially been upgraded. It can now accommodate 10,000 viewers. Asterisk caret underscore underscore caret asterisk. Faced with Jiang Pingji's bullet screen that was suspected of acting cute, many viewers felt that the contrast was cute. The streamer's words and actions were usually cold or domineering and fierce. When did she have such a soft and cute side? However, when the two completely different styles blended together, there was a different kind of cute contrast. This caused many old viewers to make a ruckus, and the bullet screen was in a mess. Jiang Pingji rarely took the initiative to communicate with the viewers in the live broadcast room. It was the same this time. After explaining a little about the increase in the number of viewers in the live broadcast room, she returned to her usual self and sat quietly in the carriage. The coachman drove the carriage steadily and skillfully. She slept until noon. His pajamas were wrinkled, and his long hair was a little messy. Sitting on the bed, he saw the light coming through the door. His eyes showed some confusion, but he quickly regained his clarity. Outside the room, a maid heard the movement and asked in a gentle voice, "Master, are you awake?" "Yes, I'm awake." He tidied up his appearance a little, and the maids who had been waiting outside the door for a long time filed in. The whole process was silent. You're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.